Well, here we are, ready to talk about an ongoing saga that has been happening for a long time now. About 6 months at least, there has been like ongoing more news coming out about this particular drama, call it abuse allegations, whatever. We've done coverage of topics like this before when we've been talking about like Sophie from Mars, for example. And honestly, I think the weirdest thing about like the Xena and Poppy stuff and like me covering it is how long it has taken me to get around to covering it because frankly there's been so much material so far that I could easily have done independent, oh, here's a new thing, here's a new development, drama streams. I could have done this like 6 different times. So today we're kind of taking everything that's been happening over the last 6 months and maybe even a little bit before that and trying to sort of put it all together and kind of contextualize it. We're not going to be going into full reading every single part of the transcript kind of detail. There are other drama channels who've been talking about this, and a lot of these screenshots and this documentation is available publicly anyway. So the document that I'm going to be reading from primarily is going to be available public. And some of you have maybe even seen some of the other Google Docs dropping, showing screenshots evidencing questionable behavior at the very minimum. I don't want to front load it too much, but yeah, it's been tricky for sure. And there's been a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of people who are trying to still be supportive of Xena and Poppy, and just kind of gradually that not working out, which happens sometimes because the behavior has just been kind of increasingly erratic. So I guess this does require some content warnings. There's going to be discussion of like different forms of abuse or perhaps emotional abuse, like financial abuse, like coercion, gaslighting, and a discussion of like sexual assault and rape, sexual harassment, all kinds of stuff. So, like, we're not going to go into intense detail about any of the stuff, but it is going to be kind of tough to get through. And particularly, I think another thing that's worth mentioning up top as far as content warnings is like parental abuse. And like for me, I know that that can be kind of hard to get through sometimes because I have an abusive parent who I don't have a relationship with anymore, who I cut off ties with a long time ago. So a lot of us are going to probably have at least something in this story that we feel we can personally resonate with. And so I urge you to take caution. I feel like it's worth mentioning up top that my purpose in addressing these allegations, the situation has mostly winded down from now, it seems. This is, I feel, almost a post-mortem, but I guess I'm trying to bring this to an audience on YouTube who haven't seen all of everything that's been going on, mostly over on Twitter. We're not going to be going into the full context of everything, like I said. I do encourage everybody to, if you want to have like a fully informed opinion, I think it's totally fair to say you should read all of the context that's available to you. You should read the full chat logs. And I also encourage you all to listen to what Xena and Poppy have said, because they've started posting videos about this stuff on their YouTube channel and like they've been responding to some of these allegations. So in order to have a fair and balanced view, I encourage you to see what they've had to say. But we're going to be kind of laying out things in a way that I hope kind of summarizes and makes the point that we're trying to make. If Xena and Poppy continue to do what I believe are inappropriate behaviors, then at least more people know about it. And we can say here, this has been substantiated. This is not a whisper network, because I do believe that there has been a whisper network present where people try to warn folks. And this is just, all of that whisper network stuff kind of hitting public. So this document we're going to be talking about a few different things in this document. We're going to be talking about who are Poppy and Xena, what is the point of talking about them. We're going to be talking about probably, if you know about this situation, this is the thing that you know about, which is that Poppy and one of her exes had a nasty breakup, and Poppy made allegations against this person that she had committed sexual assault. So pretty big allegation, pretty major event that's been ongoing on Twitter for a while. We're also going to be talking about an individual who is a trans refugee from the UK, who Poppy subjected to basically uncomfortable sexual situations. And we're also going to be talking about Poppy and Zena's 23-year-old adult kid, who has published some pretty shocking evidence and remarks about how Poppy and Zena were treating them at home. And then we're going to be kind of talking about, just generally concerning patterns of behavior from both, well, I guess mostly Poppy, because she's the one who's pretty vocal on their channel, but Zena does not like to be not included. So the whole motto of this segment is going to be, but wait, it gets worse. Right. Yeah, let's start with talking about like who is Poppy. So this is something that I wanted to kind of touch on. It's like some things that are worth noting. So Poppy is a therapist. She's currently like, I think 42 years old. She's a trans woman. And originally the channel was called Trans Girl Therapist. So to start with, Poppy's entire internet presence, as I knew her within the leftist space as a creator, was sort of predicated on the idea that she is an expert of some sort, So at some point, they did switch the name of the channel, and now it's Zena and Poppy Wholesome Degenerates. For a while, I think it was just Zena and Poppy, but that's because Zena doesn't like to be ignored, and they stream together as a couple, so Trans Girl Therapist made it too oriented around Poppy. And so that wholesome degeneracy thing is something that I just wanted to bring to the attention up top, because I think that vibe, or like whatever the intention of that term is going to be kind of relevant to the behavior that we see play out here. So Poppy is a licensed therapist. She does speak with authority about stuff, including borderline personality disorder and PTSD. She is diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which is relevant because she talks about it a lot in terms of the relationship dynamics that she engages in. And she has never undergone a specific treatment for BPD, as far as I know. She has been in a therapy called EMDR. EMDR is primarily made to address PTSD symptoms and helping resolve difficult memories in that way. It is not a treatment for BPD, and people who have strong dissociative symptoms, and Poppy does, as we'll discuss, or I don't know, I guess I can't remember when it becomes relevant later, but Poppy is also either has DID or OSDD. These are the current terms for what would previously have been called like multiple personalities, but it's a dissociative disorder, and EMDR can make those worse. So yeah, she's diagnosed OSDD. So she's never been in a specific therapy for DBT. And I just think that that's important, like, for you to keep in mind she's never been in specifically DBT therapy or anything else that is specifically to treat her borderline. And then her channel, like currently the Discord community is called The Foundation, which is of course like paired up with the Wholesome Degenerates page, the YouTube channel. They broadcast themselves, along with that whole trans girl therapist vibe. They kind of make a point to broadcast themselves as a safe space for neurodivergent people and like queer people, those with BPD, plural systems, PTSD, and of course for trans people. So as a result of that, the audience that they've cultivated, which I think that you do deliberately kind of cultivate a particular kind of audience. The particular audience that Poppy and Zena have cultivated are basically like mentally ill, neurodivergent, traumatized trans and queer people. So this whole saga kind of started out with like Milena posting about their intense breakup. So I'm skipping past some, Milena wrote this document, and I'm skipping past some of this stuff that she's written up top because I feel like I've set the stage for what I want to talk about. I know EMDR with art therapy or dance therapy can be used for DID, but it's not common to see or well enough researched for most practitioners to recommend it. Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that she needs therapy to treat her OSDD. I wouldn't suggest that per se, but because OSDD on its own is not necessarily like disruptive enough that you would need therapy in order to be able to function executive function wise. Just if you're having a hard time doing stuff in your life because of amnesia or something, obviously that would make it an issue. I just think it's interesting that she has BPD and hasn't really tried to treat it directly. Can BPD be fully treated or not? Yeah, so here's the thing. and I guess I'll just say this up top before we get further into this. I have BPD, and I did do specific hardcore therapy for BPD. I did dialectical behavioral therapy, and I still use those skills. I was in it for 2 years, and I basically graduated from the program, meaning that my symptoms were so managed that I did not need to be in therapy like that anymore. And so basically, it's a behavioral disorder characterized by extremes of emotionality. Like, it's easier for you to experience extreme emotions, and it's harder for you to come back down off of extreme emotions is one of the big things. And there's like different behaviors like inappropriate displays of anger, or, you know, idealization and devaluation, and suicidal behaviors and reckless impulsivity. Like, there's a bunch of different symptoms. So you can, through treatment, reduce those behavioral symptoms enough that you like technically don't qualify as having BPD anymore. So it's very treatable, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I think that I barely, or I don't think I quite qualify anymore as having BPD behaviorally. Like, I think I'm just under, or maybe, I don't know, but I've resolved a lot of my symptoms. But yeah, so just speaking about BPD, I want you to know that I'm speaking about that from like a perspective of, I know what the hell I'm talking about. You know what I mean? We're kind of looking at patterns of behavior here. Any one of these issues might not be enough to make a whole call out post or anything, but this on its own, looking at the last 6 months of behavior, you might be able to kind of put together a more cohesive story. So that's sort of what we're intending to do. Speaking to the parasocial relationship, can you have good relationships this way? And like, yeah, how does Poppy think of this and approach this? So we have basically just some highlights from a conversation where she is discussing that her relationships are fluid. You know, she's kind of, I guess, describing relationship anarchy, where, you know, I guess if I'm writing smut with you, you're more than just a friend, but you're not quite a partner. So you're in this like limbo space where I don't give you as much time. And this is relevant because she is like, part of the point of this is like the way that she engages in relationships and in polyamory. So here she says, I might fly out a friend or one of my playmates to see me, but the intention might be different than if they were a partner, or it might not be, depending on the situation. So she's saying, I might fly out a friend in order to potentially do something that I might do with a partner with them. So it's kind of like implying sexuality. I like to have friends come out. And then she says, the channel is one of the ways I make friends. And she says down here, it changes the dynamic when you actually do know the content creator because it's no longer parasocial. She's kind of laying it out and saying it right up top here that she uses the channel in order to meet people who she then might be open to dating. And she does not seem to think that that is an inappropriate exploitation of a parasocial relationship. And so just as a creator up top, I want to say, not only would I not date someone who started out as a fan of my channel, but I probably wouldn't even try to be friends with the overwhelming majority of people who are fans of my channel. And that's how they meet me, you know? And like, again, she advertises the channel as wholesome degenerates. So it's a place where she invites traumatized people to come be there. And then she tries to befriend them and maybe more. So yeah, she makes sure that you know also that, you know, if you're not a partner, if you're just a playmate or a friend with benefits, you know, you're going to be lower down in the hierarchy. So I guess it is not quite relationship anarchy in that manner. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, let's look at some of Poppy's commentary about borderline as well, just kind of still setting the stage as to who these people are. So Zena and Poppy's Foundation, this is their Twitter. Poppy speaks with authority on these issues. Yeah, she says, I'm a clinician specializing in ADHD, BPD, and DID/OSDD, who is diagnosed with all three, and particularly OSDD. So she doesn't actually have, as far as I know, any particular credentials to do with BPD, and she has not personally herself been in therapy for BPD, so I don't really know why she calls herself an expert on that. But yeah, she quote tweets this and she speaks with authority as, you know, she's an expert and she's a safe space. She lives with it, so she knows how it is. You can trust her, right? That's a big part of how a lot of these people have gotten close to her, including Milena. It's kind of scary sometimes how she talks about BPD. This person, she quote tweets someone saying, I often wonder who I would have been without my BPD, who I could have been without the emotional dysregulation, intrusive thoughts, anxiety, trauma, intense fear of abandonment, impulsivity, suicidal thoughts. Maybe I could have been someone worth loving. And then Poppy retweets it going, it always comes back to this. Like, Poppy is super doomer, like super doom and gloom about BPD. And this is something that you'll see pop up more throughout this, is that she does kind of treat it like it's a terminal diagnosis almost. That it's like an entirely bad experience, an entirely difficult experience. Like, maybe I would be worth loving if I didn't have this disorder, which is really silly. Like, not only is it silly, but it's also really damaging and harmful. And it's particularly as someone who literally, like, basically more or less cured most of my problematic BPD behaviors through behavioral therapy. Like, it's so wildly irresponsible, especially for her as a clinician, to speak so, like, doomer about BPD. There aren't official credentials you can get for working with BPD unless you get specific training in DBT, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think that there's any specific credential, of course, but you could specialize in it. My therapist specialized in BPD and DBT, and she had been treating those kind of patients with that therapy for like 25 years. So like that, and that's another thing about my experience here is like my therapist was an actual, as close to an expert as you can be on BPD and specifically trans people with BPD, because that was kind of her sort of special niche interest. Okay, let's continue. So then, yeah, just continuing on with the way she talks about BPD, when she starts talking about her ex, you know, she's like, oh, we've had numerous conversations about the nature of BPD, talking about favorite people, different types of BPD. She says, so in her eyes, it's not weird to send dozens of articles to someone about her mental illness as a prerequisite to their relationship. And it's the other person's fault for not putting up with her unregulated emotional outbursts or abuse, basically. Also, I guess I want to point out here, like something that's going to be a repeat thing throughout this that really bothers me is this favorite person thing. So again, I was treated by someone who was a super duper expert in this, and this is not part of the clinical language. It's not part of any diagnostic process. Like, this favorite person concept is popularized colloquially on the internet by people who have BPD. And I guess this is how they talk about the idealization and devaluation portion of BPD. But I honestly think that Poppy uses it as just like a weird excuse to be way too intense toward people in their relationships. But anyway, there's so much to get through, so let's keep it rolling. This is particularly eye-opening as far as context for the rest of what's going to be going down here, especially as we're about to roll into the part about Snowflake is the name of the channel, or sorry, the name of the Twitter account, Snowflake. Possessiveness as a kink. This other thing that Poppy does is she uses her public platforms in this hypersexualized way. Like, Poppy claims to be hypersexual because of something that happened to her in the past, and she basically uses that as an excuse to, like, well, I'm not going to say she uses that as an excuse. She says that that's the explanation for why she is super sexual and she flirts with everybody. You know, like, one of the things that she does on this platform that she has online, which, like, is only a couple of clicks away from being like, oh yeah, that's clearly, yeah, that's the Zena and Poppy person. I don't know if this one was ever linked in the bio, probably not, but she's like, yeah, one aspect of me being in dom mode is the desire to possess the other. Possessiveness is frowned upon in poly. Some level of it is expected with doms, though. But for me, it seems like something that is potentially a central aspect when I switch to dom. She talks about it a little more. You know, if kink is about exploring power and taboo, then why not explore possessiveness? Which, to be clear, I think that would be okay if your partners were consenting. And that's the problem that we're about to run into here when we talk about Poppy's possessiveness and how that actually, like, how we see that bearing out in her relationships. Okay, yeah. So let's also jump over to this. I forgot that there was going to be a video portion of today's stream. There's a bit where Poppy is talking about her views of polyamory and her experience with polyamory on her show. Isn't dom without consent just kidnapping? True. So this is Poppy talking about her experience with polyamory. Okay, here we go.
Relationship anarchy Neon Rush refers to a type of polyamory where there is no such thing as actual rules or agreements. So most of the time I tend to go with the Frank Vove school of like more than two, which is that you don't use rules, you use agreements. Agreements are things that everybody has to follow, such as you get regular STI testing, things like that. The problem is that
yeah, I guess I don't know.
Relationship anarchy as a thing seems to have this notion where you don't really have to tell your partners about your other partners. You kind of keep everybody in the dark if you so desire. And you have this tendency to...
I don't really think that that's a fundamental thing about relationship anarchy. The point of relationship anarchy is just that your relationships are not held in hierarchy to one another. But anyway...
Not feel like you really owe anyone anything. The problem with that is that people have things like jealousy come up. They also have things like possessiveness come up. And these are natural human things. I am possessive.
Okay, we already said that.
Exceedingly so. There are partners, not all of them, but there are partners I use the term mine with. Good example is Zena. Zena is mine. Now, does that mean Zena can I have other partners? Sure, there's a person we're both looking at wanting to date.
I also hate how often Zena and Poppy both are like, oh, so we're both interested in dating you. Like, it's super unicorn huntery, but they like are cool with having like multiple unicorns. But it does have that weird, like, it's weird how many people who are just friends with Poppy and Zena, but who are like required to be in a group chat with them for some reason. Like, you can't just be friends with Poppy, which is part of why I guess I was like, it's weird. Like, I feel like I met Poppy first and I was trying to be friends with her, but I was like, I have to also be friends with Zena. And I just didn't know Zena very well. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we saw you from across the bar and really liked your vulnerability. Yeah, actually, people are offering corrections in the chat. In relationship anarchy, you prioritize ground-up agreements rather than hegemonic norms. Okay, so we just have a couple more minutes to see this, whatever this particular conversation is. Let's go.
But guess what? There's still a way in my brain that Zena, and actually one of my other partners, is coded as mine. Yeah, does that play well with Polly? No. Do I care? No.
So she laughs. She's like, I know that possessiveness doesn't play well with Polly, and I don't care. And then she laughs. And I know, like, if you already know everything that's going to happen in the future, seeing this is like almost kind of chilling. The like nonchalance with which she treats like how bad she is at poly relationships. Like, I personally failed spectacularly at trying to do poly. It was not a fun time. I regret almost everything involved in that entire process. But, like, so I have that perspective of going like, okay, so there are things that are like you should be more careful kind of things. If you're super possessive and that is going to come out in your kink stuff with your other relationships, like, you really need to be super upfront about that with people, that like, hey, you know, I struggle a lot with possessiveness in relationships and you should know that before you agree to date me. I don't think that she does enough work up front to clarify that with people. But yeah, let's see her finish talking about this.
I don't give a fuck. It's what my brain needs to feel good. And so this poly situation wouldn't be that deep, except it was something that kept eating away at me, because there's the clinician side of my brain that sensed that there was an issue with the situation and what this story involved. And then there was another part of my brain that was like, BPD, freaking the fuck out. And the problem is these two parts work together really well.
Okay.
And so what ended up happening is me having a ton of anxiety coming up, having to deal with a bunch of blowout issues. This cut time away from me hanging out, you know, spending time with Zena, spending time with friends. It basically caused a lot of stuff. And here's the problem. You could say, well, Poppy, why didn't you just make sure to spend time with people and, like, you know, just step away from this stuff? That's a good question. You can't. You have borderline. In this hypothetical scenario, you have borderline. And this person who you just started...
So, yeah, she's about to make it sound like she's not in control of her actions because of her diagnosis, basically. That's what's going to happen here.
Dating is your FP. They are the person that in your brain, for some reason, codes just right to be...
When she says FP, that stands for favorite person. So this is her saying, you know, when she is trying to date a new person, she becomes consumed because her brain is just like that, and that's her disorder, and she's not really trying to treat it. She doesn't seem to see this as a problem. She doesn't seem to see any of her behaviors as a problem that need to be fixed, which is why she's not in a more BPD-focused therapy, TBA.
Incredibly important in your hierarchy of needs, because there's some way in which they interact with your psychology, combination of also the emotional intensity, etc. Normally,
something at
most
the 15
BPD
minute
people
mark.
have one. I have two.
Oh, she's like, oh, I have multiple FPs. You know this thing that's supposed to be extra special and you only have one and it's a totally, it's a exclusive BPD favorite person? Well, guess what? I have two. Man, it's just, you can tell that she's not been in any specific BPD treatment because, like, people who've been in treatment don't talk about their illness this way. That's my personal opinion as someone who's been hardcore in it. Like, I went very, very far with my treatment, and yeah, I just think that this is silly more than anything.
That creates some problems because if there's contention, say, this one's upset about losing time with me because of another partner, I go into a panic attack.
And I need this one's help to, have pants because I'm migrating for several days.
But it can't always communicate. So,
or this one doesn't realize that I said, hey, I need pants, or hey, I need you to do the laundry 2 days ago. And then, 2 days later, here we go, there's some stress. And, oh yeah, Zena doesn't have pants and is very dysphoric now.
Now, to be fair,
skirts.
Last couple days, things have calmed the fuck down.
I think that was the most
What do you do
if
you're borderline and your favorite person ghosts you? Call your therapist.
Call your therapist.
Ford said,
okay, cool. Yeah, she's going to start reading chat. So that was the main part of it that we wanted to look at with regards to, like, how she talks about borderline, how she talks about polyamory, Zena going on some weird tangent. Yeah, let's not go into a weird Zena tangent. Let's bring it back over here. So with that context, where Poppy's like, I know that I'm super possessive and I know that it doesn't play well with Polly. How does that play out in how she interacts with people in public? Metamors. Metamor is the term for your partner's partner. So, like, if I have a primary relationship with the person I live with, and then my partner is dating someone, and I'm not dating that person, then that person is my metamor. So my partner's partner. Poppy says, love finding out about a new metamor at 3 a.m. She's also very messy, in my opinion, with the public posting. Like, I would just not post about things like this on my public Twitter. It maybe if I had, like, a private Tumblr account that was not, like, a couple clicks away from my YouTube stuff. Like, I just find this really messy. Checking the likes. Oh, so yeah, speaking of messy behavior, this is Snowflake, who's going to be a central character of this discussion. She, I think at this time is in a relationship with Poppy, and it's kind of early on in their relationship. She posts about her cat, and then you can see there's 14 likes on the video, on this photo. There's only 2 comments, and one of those comments is Poppy saying, I really shouldn't look through the likes. And you might think, what the hell does that mean? Well, one of the people who liked this video, or this photo, was Amy, who is, at the time, No's other partner, or Poppy's metamor, because it's Poppy's partner's partner. This is basically like Poppy looking through the likes on her partner's tweets in order to see that her other partners were liking and interacting with it. Because Poppy will say herself, she gets super duper triggered by being around metamors. She basically has said that it is very triggering. It gives her panic attacks. It makes her suicidal. Like, okay, so when she says her possessiveness doesn't play well with Polly, we're talking about her saying, like, seeing your ex or knowing about your ex or whatever makes me suicidal. And she's like, but being Polly makes me happy, so I'm going to keep doing it. It's really concerning. So why, if you know that you can't deal with being around metamors, are you going to go looking through your girlfriend's likes to see who's responding? Okay, here's another situation. So here's that Amy person who's dating No. No says something kind of flirtatious to Amy, and Amy says something flirtatious back. Okay, they're flirting a little bit. And then Poppy comes in. They're being flirtatious. Yeah, Amy's like, you do come to mind quite a lot. And Poppy's goes, huh? And Amy says, oh, like, I think of her a lot, thinking that this is a question, huh? But it's not a question, huh? And then Poppy says, no, I shouldn't interact with you. And then quote tweets her metamor, quote tweets this, and says, love getting a panic attack by running into a metamor. This is what I mean by, like, being really messy. And, like, also, like, again, as a creator, why are you quote tweeting your metamors to talk about how much it triggers you that you just ran into them in public? You know, you would think you should maybe just block them. Or if you really can't restrain yourself, you might even have to actually block your girlfriend in order to not see things happening. Like, because the only other reasonable, like not reasonable, the only other possible way to solve this problem for Poppy would be if, let's say, Snowflake just completely stopped interacting with her other partners in public. And then, yeah, Poppy saying, I have very real trauma around interactions with metamors. Today did not make that better. I worked my ass off to fix the situation, and the other partner acts like a child. Bridge burned. So again, here's No and Amy flirting. Poppy says, oh, I've already got it covered. I think they're talking about potentially getting No a breast augmentation. Amy says, oh, I see you've got it covered. I have no complaints. And then Poppy says, I assumed you wouldn't. I'm having mine done sometime in May. I'll send pics and let you see her work. She also did my vaginoplasty, and that went swimmingly. It helps being a therapist who does gender-affirming care and having lots of resources. If I have my way, I'm going to get our girl FFS, BA, and SRS. Making my mate hotter one visit at a time. I can't place why, but I'm very uncomfortable with that. I don't really know exactly why, but I did not like it. I'm pretty sure I saw that tweet at the time, and I was like, I don't love that. But I can't say why except that it feels gross. What a coincidence. It seems like that'll also impact my girlfriend. You're welcome. And then No says, I love you both, and you're both dorks. Amy says, love you too, baby. And then Poppy replies to the girlfriend with, I'm a head out gif. So, like I said earlier, possessiveness is not inherently wrong if you're playing it out in your kink consensually. All of this is happening on Twitter. So, in public on Twitter, she's going, oh no, you can't. She's like, I'm a head out. Like, the mere existence of your girlfriend's girlfriend liking her tweets is like making you spiral out like this. Girl, you should not be in poly. Like, you should not be doing polyamory. So yeah, I'm a head out. And then, oh, whelp baby is no longer a safe pet name. So Poppy's like, I literally can't call any of my partners baby anymore because this one person called my partner baby. As though that's not like literally the most common pet name in the English speaking world. But okay, now baby's no longer a safe pet name. Oh, okay. And so Amy just was normal and says, love you too, baby. Poppy responds, says, I love you too, and mine. Like the super possessive stuff again, which would be fine if Snowflake was on board with it and if it wasn't basically resulting in a situation where she's like, I just can't talk to my partners in public anymore. That's kind of what it feels like. So in the middle of this, there was another one of her play partners was being happy about something with another partner. Puppy's going to get a cage. Someone else is getting you a cage. Oh, dogs can only have one owner, says Poppy. Well, that's not true. And then Poppy says, that is absolutely true. I don't share. Again, it would be fine. Like, oh yeah, this person was not even Poppy's partner at the time. And then a couple weeks later, Poppy announced that she'd started dating her. So the possessiveness starts before she's even dating the person. Make sure you say happy birthday to my lovely cutie. So this is a person posting about their girlfriend. And I guess Poppy is interested in that person or dating that person because she just replies ... Like, yeah, you can't talk about or to your other partners where Poppy can see it. So that brings us to everything that's going on with Snowflake, which is, if you're here and you know anything about this, this is going to be probably the part that you've heard before or that you've, seen at least some mention of. So they were dating and they were supposed to be going on this visit together. There were a lot of details that led up to it, basically, but Poppy starts saying, oh, I wish when I expressed discomfort for something to one of my partners, they would hear it as insecurity and would assure me rather than stonewalling me. I'm not trying to condemn someone for posting lewds. I just don't want to be jump scared after a fight. Like, I don't know what exactly that's referring to, but it kind of is just showing like that their relationship was there was strife in their relationship leading up to what was supposed to be a visit in person. Oh, and here's, Poppy talking about basically like she's so sensitive that a slight change in voice tone or a short reply, it sends her spiraling and panicking, going, oh, do they hate me? Have I done something wrong? Like, Poppy's relationships are very intense from her end because she's like this. Because she gets obsessive about a person and she's like, oh my God, I love you so much. You're my FP. I'm going to put you on a pedestal and put all this positive attention into this. And then because of all of that intensity, she's like, oh my God, I'm now questioning if you hate me because of some stupid little thing. Like, oh my God, you're going to reject me and leave me. And the fear of abandonment kicks in. So she's like, oh, she's frantically checking if they are active, checking every minute because this person is our life. No one else matters. And then it turns out that their phone had died. Like, I don't think anybody wants to date this person. I'm not saying Poppy specifically, but the person who goes, oh my God, I need you to message me back. Like, are you mad at me? You know, you put a period at the end of that sentence. You know, like, good grief, girl. Even without the context of Polly, that is so much. That is too much. Then she goes on saying, I can't meet the need of interacting with metamors. So again, basically the issue with Poppy and No ultimately ends up kind of being about how Poppy treats her metamors and like how she treats her girlfriend in relation to like the boundaries that Poppy has about metamors. So then Poppy goes, oh, will I mess this up so badly that my time in January with her won't come? If that visit is canceled, am I enduring all of this right now for nothing? There are moments when I feel like I'm dying. The anxiety gets so bad. And she shares that with the hashtag BPD, you know, relatable BPD feels. If you haven't already seen it, there's like the Poppy Amory one document, which is like a shit ton of messages between No and Poppy, basically. And we might look at some of this. But, oh yeah, so I don't want to watch this right now. This document will be made public after the stream, so you can go through and click all the links and read through everything in more detail. But Poppy talks about her relationship with No Flake, and she's like, basically, it's this whole favorite person thing. She's just like putting No on a pedestal and going like, oh my God, she's so amazing, and I'm like really looking forward to seeing her and all this kind of stuff. So they go on this trip, or they're going to go on this trip. They're supposed to go on this trip. Poppy says, in 48 hours, I'm going to be in a hotel room with my fiance Zena and my mate Snowflake. I am so excited. And then for some reason, there's a breakup, and here's why. So Snowflake says, my friend's pizza strap, well, I think there's a party happening. And then, so because she has quote tweeted her girlfriend, Poppy says, you do know that when this loads, you can see who the person is briefly, even if we have each other mutually blocked. So Poppy has tried to fix this problem, I guess, by blocking Amy and also being blocked by Amy. But she's like annoyed with Snowflake because of how it works when Twitter loads. Like, why don't you stop obsessively refreshing the page on your girlfriend's Twitter timeline? And that would stop happening. I know I'm editorializing a little bit. I'm sorry, you guys. I've been dealing with this for like at least 4 months. Like looking through these screenshots, trying to figure out how to tell this story. So I apologize if I am a little bit dismissive at times. Oh, so Amy and Snowflake were broken up at this time, apparently. So as a consequence, No blocked her. No blocks Poppy. I lost the girl I loved. Like, oh, and then she spirals and like, oh, I fucked it all up. Oh no, I messed everything up. And then there's kind of a gap where it seems something happened because Poppy starts posting about how she's actually going to go see Snowflake. Okay, so we'll fill in the blanks there in a bit. Okay, so there aren't very many posts happening this weekend because they're at the hotel, okay? So they go to meet her and they are staying at a hotel, so there's not a lot of posting happening. And then suddenly Poppy's posting, oh my God, she doesn't love me anymore. I just want to die. Everything's terrible. I'm just not enough. She's just, you know, at the hotel away, like 6 minutes away from this girl's house. She's spiral posting like all day, by the way. She's like basically still at this hotel that her girlfriend left her at a while ago. Her now ex-girlfriend, to be clear. There's so many DMs too. Like we can go through this. I was going to go through it in a sec though. So basically, to give context here, and there's like an entire thing going on. What happened here is Snowflake broke up with Poppy before they came out. Okay, so before this, so they're having a fight here about basically these boundaries that Poppy is trying to be like, you can't. Yeah, here's the one I was looking for. I'm not going to go through this entire thing because there's so much, but please read it. This is like weeks of unedited content from this DMs log, basically. So Poppy starts to get pissed off at No for posting something about Amy or quote tweeting Amy. And she's like, this might torpedo the trip. Like this is a massive up the day before we leave for your trip. You know, you should be doing all these things. Like she's super harsh in the way that she speaks to No. So No just says, don't come down. So before the trip, No's like, don't come down. And they continue, and, you know, No is like super dissociated. And one of their headmates had switched out. Like, oh, all of this happens over the course of basically 1 week. It's crazy. So No basically just like tries to break up with Poppy. I mean, she's basically saying, I don't want to see you. Don't come. I don't think this is going to go well. I don't want to fix this. There's too much resentment and stress. I can't handle this anymore. Very clipped, short responses, while Poppy is just like, just absolutely spiraling out. Like, please don't, please, I'm sorry, I f***ed up. So keep in mind again, like, this is a person that she was just like, you may have just really screwed up this trip, you know? And then for her to just go, like, oh my God, why did this happen? Now then she's all like, please don't. But No, it like breaks up with her basically and is like, no, I'm not dealing with this anymore. And then if you skip forward, Zena then spends like literally 6 hours across the span of an entire day wearing away at No's resolve and being like, can you please come on the trip? And even if our relationship doesn't work out, like, please at least try. And she, Haley posts, Snowflake posts like, hey, I don't think the relationship is going to work out, but if you insist, then sure. And part of that was also like, they had already bought the hotel room. And so they kept saying to Snowflake, well, we already paid for the hotel, you know, please let us come out. Please keep doing it. And Zena ended up wearing her down and going, okay, well, I'll agree to see you guys, but I don't think that it's going to work out. So they were broken up. And yeah, it's arguably like, it's a type of financial abuse. If you're like, please do this thing I want you to do because I've spent money on such and such. And so it's a way of guilting. Yeah, flipping back and forth between I hate you and please don't leave me. It's wild. So yeah, you can go in and read all of these posts. Like, it's a lot to go through. I have read all of it. So when I'm paraphrasing it to you, please understand that it's like, I've read all of this. So then, yeah, they agree to do the trip and they go, and the events of this trip are part of like the main catalyst for like most of the public drama that's been happening because, you know, Poppy's like, who would bang someone as their first after getting bottom surgery and then would break up with them the next day? So they hooked up basically, like, as far as I understand it, and all of this has happened offline, so there's no like written record of it, but Poppy was the one who really wanted this visit to happen. She had all this pent up energy and she initiated the encounters with Snowflake is asexual and does not experience motivated sexual attraction. And she even says in this document that, like, if we read her posts, I would have to find it real quick, but she says, I had sex with you because I wanted you to feel good. Like, as an asexual person, just because I don't experience motivated attraction doesn't mean that I can't enjoy myself and especially enjoy giving my partner something that they want, right? So from Snowflake's perspective, you know, she was like, okay, well, Poppy wants to do this, and I just told her I would give it a fair try. So, okay, I'll do this thing to make her happy. And then basically, again, the stuff that's happening offline is like, allegedly, basically, Snowflake was like, I actually don't have any feelings for you, and I really don't like you, and I don't want to be around you, and I'm just going to leave this hotel. And Poppy was like, oh my God, please don't leave. Oh my God, I'm going to freak out and cry and spiral out. And she asked No, like, did you just do this to test, like, how you feel about me or something? Like, how could you have sex with me right now? And No was basically just like, yeah, sure, I did this to test you, in order to get Poppy to like let her leave the hotel room. Because Poppy, as far as I understand it, was basically blocking the door and preventing No from leaving. So that's my understanding of what happened off stream. Okay, like off text. We have no proof of any of that conversation, right? But that is kind of the catalyst behind some of these events that are coming up. Yeah, so, oh, I'm sorry you felt as though you were the one cracking when I was the one that was constantly getting hurt by your lack of decision and your unwillingness to hold to even a basic boundary. this is it's like when somebody gives up, when they take your love and throw it away. She's doom posting at the hotel. Like, this is her at the hotel, cringe posting publicly about her breakup with a girl who made it very clear before the trip that she was probably not going to get back with her. So yeah, again, like, oh, so much money. I gave so much money and time and effort. She couldn't even show up on a very basic level. And then finally Poppy leaves the hotel, right? So this is just kind of an aside right here because Poppy has a giant BPD mega thread. I still haven't read it myself, like the whole thing, but she talks about her experience of BPD, saying, "We are hypervigilant, constantly on the lookout for those we love to leave us. This can manifest as fears of our loved ones getting hurt, in the best case scenario, to projections of cheating in the worst case scenario. My experience of this is that it is pervasive and constant. This is manageable if you do the work on self-confidence, honestly. Because again, I have BPD, I have fear of abandonment. I do this thing where, like, sometimes if my partner is like going to hang out with someone, I'll be like spiraling out about it, but I like manage my own feelings. I really don't talk to my partner about it at all. And it happens less now because, first of all, I have way more confidence in myself and I have more confidence in our relationship. So like, that's the kind of thing that you do. You use your skills, Poppy. You use your check the facts skill where you try to non-judgmentally say what is actually happening. So instead of saying, oh, my partner doesn't even care about my basic boundaries because they keep interacting with their whatever in public, like, okay, what's objectively happening is your partner is talking to their other partner in public. Objectively, without judgment, without your interpretations on it, those are the facts. That's what's happening, you know? And then from there, you can go, okay, so my partner is just talking to their other partner. Is this a proportionate reaction? Is me freaking out proportionate in this situation? No, it's not proportionate. So then you use your opposite action skills to bring your emotions to a level that's more tolerable. Like, this is what DBT is, guys. I have the literal teacher's manual. Like, literally, I could reach out and grab it and show it to you. Like, I have the teacher's manual. It's very basic emotion regulation skills. Poppy lacks basic emotion regulation skills. And girl, you're not born with them. That's why you go to evidence-based therapy. Like, it's, ooh, this makes me so mad as someone who has BPD and like doesn't want it to have a bad name. Poppy gives BPD a bad name and it really pisses me off. Even as other symptoms have faded over time, this one has stayed consistent. Only my way of dealing with this has changed. When I say I'm existentially afraid, I have to be clear. We're talking about abject terror, capital T. You know, it feels like death, not just a type of grief. Self-sabotage. She says that she self-sabotages by believing our partner is going to leave. So rather than share those fears, we act out. And of course, eventually that's a self-fulfilling prophecy because your partner will leave. She continues. We're terrified of being abandoned because we do not just lose the person we cared for, but rather a part of ourselves that is ripped out. Like, you should not be talking about your illness like this. Like, you're like way to reinforce it for sure. I don't know, man. We don't deserve the stereotype of being abusive. I don't think. Yeah, I do think it's harmful for there to be a stereotype about being abusive, but you know, it also requires you to have some amount of self-awareness about the harm that your behaviors could have on other people. You know, just because you're being honest with your feelings doesn't mean you're not still being like abusive or manipulative or hurtful in some way. This is a thing. She's romanticizing it in a melancholic way. I think that's a fair way to put it. Yeah, it's like it's abstracting it out to like, oh, it's not controllable. It's so intense. My love for you is so intense that I want to kill myself. Like, it is that romanticizing kind of thing. You can have like honest feelings and be like, I'm so jealous and I'm so upset or whatever. But that doesn't mean that you get to like treat your feelings as like an unfixable thing. Milena kind of says like, it's an unfixable reality. Like, this just is how it is. It just is how I feel. And part of the problem here is that Poppy lays an inappropriate amount of responsibility for her feelings on other people. This is something that I've been talking about recently a lot because I'm seeing it more and more. It's obvious when people are offloading the responsibility for their emotions onto you. Like Poppy, she's not getting what she needs out of blocking her metamors. She is not able to control herself from checking to see if her metamors are interacting with her girlfriends, right? So because she can't handle her emotions, then it becomes her partner's problem. Like, you have to stop interacting with your other partners in public in order to manage my feelings of jealousy and insecurity. That's not how it works. Like, it's not the thing that you should be doing, honestly. And I feel like as a 42-year-old woman, you should know better. I don't know. I would like to think that maybe someday she's gonna introspect on this and go, oh man, yeah, no, I'm definitely like forcing other people to manage my feelings for me. She's probably too far gone. Like, she's 42 and I don't think anything about her behavior is going to change. Part of the point of this stream is because, like, just that I want more people to know that this is the kind of shit that she's doing. So if she has any credibility left, you know, I would like people to know that this is the person that you're putting your faith in. This is the person who's saying, oh, listen to me and what I say about how to do poly relationships. Let me explain to you what boundaries are and how they work. This is what she thinks boundaries are, is you need to change your behavior in order to manage my emotions. When you're good at polyamory, you'll see your partner flirting with a metamor and go, good for them. That's hot, you know? Like, and yeah, Milena posts in here a kind of a bit of a section here about how Poppy also talks about her experiences and perspective with BPD as being the objective reality of BPD. Whereas, like, hey, I'm here, I have BPD, I'm a clear example to the counter. Like, you don't have to be super jealous and possessive of your partner. You don't have to act out and say that you're suicidal when your partner is trying to date someone else. Like, you don't actually have to be like this. My mom had her turn around at age 50, you know, we can hope. Yeah, Milena wants to highlight that BPD is not 24-hour suffering, and that, you know, if you can experience extreme bad emotions, it also means you can experience extreme good emotions, and that beauty should not be missed. You know, your life can be poetry. The extreme positives of BPD can be very positive. So, you know what we were just talking about how Poppy would not let No leave the hotel room? The next section header. Yeah. So Poppy is like, okay, who would bang someone as their first after SRS and then break up with them the next day? It was my first time doing several things, and she knew how special it was, how much it meant to me, and all it was for her was a test to see if she still loved me. So Poppy believed No when No said, okay, sure, I was testing you. But again, No was just saying that to get out of the hotel room, and it did shock Poppy enough. She was speechless, apparently, according to accounts that I've heard, that basically she let No leave the hotel, okay? So Poppy starts talking about this as a kind of violation. And then Poppy starts asking her friends, do you think that what she did to me was something like a sexual assault? Or maybe and then this person is like, oh yeah, she had sex with you under false pretenses, lying about having feelings for you, and then using your body in order to understand her own emotions. Again, this is an asexual person who, like, if she doesn't feel motivated sexual attraction, why would she use sex as a test to see whether she's still in love with Poppy? You know, this is where things just start to really not make any sense. So Poppy's like, yeah, she assaulted me, basically. Like, I feel so used and violated. I have to go talk about this in therapy now. I guess I get to add SA survivor to my resume of trauma. And then, oh yeah, so this is where she hammers down. She's like, the informed part of informed consent makes this assault. Like, she did not inform me that she didn't have feelings for me or whatever, and therefore it was a form of assault. She starts posting this graphic everywhere: freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, specific. Now, if we're looking at this model and at what she says up here about, like, oh, it was my first time, it meant so much to me, it was my first after SRS. So basically for Poppy, this first sexual encounter for her is like losing her virginity, essentially. And my question is, did No realize, like, was she fully informed that this was going to be such a huge big deal emotionally for Poppy, that she's like, oh my God, I'm so looking forward to this. You're going to be my first, you know? And then, like, is it enthusiastic consent if your asexual partner, if you initiate sex with your asexual partner and then they go along with it because they want to make you happy, is that enthusiastic consent? I mean, according to this model, would that mean that every time an asexual person or a beleaguered wife consents to, like, have sex to satisfy their partner, does that mean that, like, a lot of consensual sex is suddenly not consensual anymore because it lacks enthusiasm, you know? Like, yeah, I don't know, man. So, like, of course, I want to validate really quick. Like, of course, Poppy feels bad that she was trying desperately to make this relationship work and then it didn't work, right? And, you know, in her desperation, she was going like, why would you do this? Did you just do this to test whether you really loved me or not? And then No's like, yes, now get out of the way. Of course that would feel bad. You know, I understand that would probably feel pretty bad. That does not mean that this was a violation of some kind. And it was clear before this event happened. Like, none of this was enthusiastic. Like, I can agree. I can believe that she has trauma about this breakup, but like at this point, she's re-traumatizing herself over and over again. And like, you know, choosing to see this in a particular way. And I will also say that, I don't know if this message comes back up to you, back up in here. This is a big response from No Flake. This is like Poppy is trying to reconcile with No afterward. She's like, please, I still miss so much about you. So, okay, this is in the immediate aftermath. So, like, after Poppy had driven home, after she had already had this conversation where No said, yes, I just had sex with you to test my feelings for you. She's saying, I still want you in my life after everything. I miss you so much. Like, she's fawning and going on in the DMs. And then, like, No is, like, kind of not responding in a very robust manner. And then she finally does try to respond. And in the midst of this, she says, I lied about the sex stuff. I'm truly sorry for doing so. You were initiating, and in my mind, I did still have feelings for you. I wanted to make you happy. And I'm not blaming you, for the record. I genuinely cared and wanted to make you feel amazing. But then my head started to clear up more, and I saw how you and Zena were behaving, and I just realized I didn't have any feelings, right? So when she says, I lied about the sex stuff, she's saying, I lied when I said I was doing it to test you or to test our relationship or whatever. But then Poppy runs with that and is like, look, she lied in order to make me have sex with her. That's, you know, or whatever. Like, she starts off saying it's sexual assault. So here's, you know, no one would want to admit to you that this was assault, but there's case law that backs you up. You didn't really consent. Important firsts were forever robbed from me. Oh, this is where the story starts changing in real time. So basically, it's a question of who initiated what at this point. Like, so there's like, Poppy initially says, okay, I really enjoyed going down on my girlfriend or whatever. And then she's like, later she says, oh, is she upset about how she initiated by unsnapping her leotard? Like, whatever. Like, there's a she said situation here. It's like, okay, you can't tell what actually happened. But then the story changes. Okay, look, first here she says that, okay, this person unsnapped her leotard and then I started performing oral, okay? And then she got into it, okay? But then she changes this a couple weeks later, or actually, like half an hour later, she says, she forced my head down, basically. So the narrative just changed in literally half an hour. If you thought that Poppy was an honest person, I'm sorry to burst your bubble on this. And like, I've seen her lie about stuff before and flip-flop on stuff before. So to be clear, like, I guess it was easier for me to believe that she was lying about this alleged sexual assault. Like, yeah, she just keeps changing her story. So yeah, we have the link here to the comprehensive list of the DMs. Then Twitter blows up because No Flake starts posting about it, about how she's been dogpiled. Like, because Poppy started weaponizing her audience with a copy-paste list. Like, oh, all of these people have denied my SA. You should, I don't know. There's no specific call to action, but it's like, do you block them? Do you harass them? Whatever. But yeah, No Flake is basically just saying, I'm not even involved with this. It's because she's obsessed with me. I don't want anything to do with her. There's no proof that I did anything, like SA-wise. And then she says, I still question how or why an ace person would trick anyone into sex. We'll talk about the asexuality again in a bit. So Poppy doxes Haley's name. She's like, oh, this person sexually assaulted me, and says her name is Haley, but it included her last name. Zena and Poppy have complained about doxing before. Like, oh, you know, this doesn't count as doxing because it's not her legal name. But what I will say about that is, like, it's pretty up. If you know that a trans person wants to change their name and you know what they want to change their name to, and then you publicly associate that name with, like, sexual assault, and you're stealing their name from them. Like, you're attempting to poison their name and steal it from them and prevent them from being able to change it without having to heavily consider that suddenly you're, like, if you change your name, then that's going to be a Google search away, your name associated with sexual assault. Personal opinion, that's pretty up. That's just my opinion, though. Oh, this isn't doxing, whatever, da-da-da. And of course, like, there's a difference between how Poppy feels about someone trying to dox her versus, like, how she feels about other people having access to information. So yeah, this is talking about how No tried to break up with Poppy before this trip, and Peasy negotiated to make the trip still happen. They basically coerced No into agreeing to the trip by being like, but please give us another chance, and oh, we already paid for the hotel. Speaking of coerced consent, No says, they begged and guilt-tripped me to come down to the hotel they already paid for. Poppy was fully aware I didn't want to be with her anymore ahead of that. ZZ guilt-tripped me into giving them one last chance to talk. And from my end, sex was never on the table or desired. I told them ahead of time that there was only a tiny chance that anything could be fixed, and that's corroborated in these logs if you go look at them. Poppy initiated with me without my consent. Like, so No is basically like, I wasn't, like, upset with the fact that she initiated, but she did not ask for my permission. Yeah, she's basically clarifying this happened in a hotel room, not in my house. Like, they basically just, like, convinced her to do it anyway, right? So that's more about that. Oh, and then Poppy's like, oh, do you see why 4 months with her was so abusive? Constant lack of clarity, clear lack of clear answers, and it's cryptic BS, and nothing to speak of the constant boundary crossing. So yeah, No says, I told them I would try and that there was basically no chance. And I was told that it was okay as long as I did give it one final chance. I was told I could just walk away if it didn't work out, so I did. And they chose to come down with me despite me breaking up with Poppy. And then Poppy basically just comes, she's basically like, this woman wants me to kill myself. Like, so she's positioning herself in this breakup as, and she's been doing this with the entire thing. Like, if she talks about gay fesh, or if she talks about me and how we're talking about her, like, she has been doing this repeatedly where she's like, these people clearly just want me to kill myself. You're targeting a trans woman and you're stripping her of her whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, babe, I want you to get into DBT. Like, I think that you should actually treat your shit and, like, fix your heart and stop harming people. But apparently that's challenge mode 2024 impossible. And she's doom posting about BPD again. She basically downplays a bunch of the, she downplays a ton of the criticism against her. She always manages to downplay any criticism of her. Like, here's what she's going to say about me, okay? What she's going to say about me is that I'm only covering this to spite her because of disagreements that we had in the past over, like, oh, what was it? She said Hogwarts Legacy and Philosophy Tube. I don't know what she's talking about with Hogwarts Legacy. I guess we differed on whether a boycott was a good thing, right? But I don't remember that at all. I do think that she was a huge jerk about how she was publicly discussing the Philosophy Tube thing. And I will say that that is what made me decide that I did not want to be in community with her. But my goal after deciding that I didn't want to be in community with her was to forget that she existed. And I was well on my way to doing that, except that there are repeated allegations coming up against her, right? But she's going to downplay what I have to say. She's going to downplay my criticisms by saying, oh, you're just clout seeking. What was the Philosophy Tube thing? Oh, it was the gender dysphoria. Like, whether gender dysphoria as a diagnosis is a bad thing, essentially. And, like, she was just like, oh, this Philosophy Tube's idiotic take on gender dysphoria. And I was just like, I don't want to be in community with someone who's going to talk about highly nuanced differences of opinion like that. That's not a person who I want to be friends with. So I am not, like, trying to do this spitefully. Like, again, I was looking forward to forgetting about her existence, right? And the other thing is she's going to accuse me of clout seeking. Like, I'm only doing this to seek clout. Guess what? The first day that I talked about this on Twitter, I literally lost 60 YouTube subscribers. That's a big chunk for a channel as small as mine. Like, straight up the same day, dropped 60 subs. So my my knowledge going into this situation is, oh, people are going to stop listening to me because they're entrenched in this belief that Zena and Poppy are correct in everything that they do, basically. Like, you guys don't realize it, but they were priming you from like months and months and months ago, because they date people in their community and then they have rough breakups because they're super possessive about everything. And then they talk about their breakups on stream. So if you watch their stream content, you are primed to believe that that she is always right, and that, oh, she keeps having these crazy girlfriends who just, and then she makes content out of it, right? So yeah, you guys, there's no clout in this, like, she has 20,000 subscribers, I think, on YouTube. There's no clout in talking about her. I'm talking about it because I want to make sure that people know that this behavior is not okay, and that, she is wrong about BPD in so many ways, and the way that she talks about it is super harmful. And I want to end her ability to prey on people in this community by being like, hey, I'm gonna advertise myself as a wholesome sexual being and talk about how amazing I am about managing BPD and how good I am at poly, and then try to get vulnerable trans women in my community to date me, and then start acting all weird and possessive over them. Like, this is the pattern that I'm interested in exposing, and that this is like the reason why I don't want her to have influence. Like, this should not be a whisper network. You need to stop doing this to people, really. Yeah, so speaking of the foundation, recognizing that PZ attract vulnerable people looking for mental health support, adding to their server. Obviously, yeah, lots of traumatized trans people with BPD. So even if she doesn't explicitly say so, her speaking about these conflicts in her community and on her platform, like, leads to this kind of weaponizing your fans' loyalty to attack your opponents, right? So here's something that was tweeted and was going around, like, oh, please report the accounts listed here. They harassed my friend to the point of suicidal ideation after one of them sexually assaulted her. Literally evil shit. And there, there's just a bunch of people. And then I believe that Poppy retweeted this. She was retweeting this several times. And then there's this person, Annie, who says, every BPD patient I've ever known has had to deal with recurring guilt and shame over their condition, and has had it beaten into them that they are an abuser. If you've internalized this idea that you are an abuser, then you are much more likely to believe that you deserve to be abused, that any abuse you experience is your own fault. Because of this, people with BPD are much more prone to being abuse victims due to difficulty recognizing abuse for what it is. It's important to note that she positions herself as like, I have BPD and it's so easy for someone to abuse me, because that article that Annie wrote, Poppy retweeted it and it basically endorsed it. So you're basically saying, like, these people know about my BPD and they're going against my boundaries and making me spiral out. But she does not take the same consideration with her partners who have BPD. Like, she basically tells them, you need to use your tools. You need to figure out your problems. So it's this double standard with everything, where she doesn't care about how she affects other people. She expects you to just deal with it. But then her feelings are central and super important in everything. Yeah, and also, Gayfesh pointed out earlier that in order to discredit me, she'll probably also bring up that when I used to hang out in her voice chat, I would often have had like a couple of drinks because I have social anxiety and I was trying to make friends, and it was easier for me to join if I had had a couple of beers. So I don't know if you, dear viewer, do you think that I have a lack of credibility in discussing this issue because I find it somewhat easier to socialize after I've had a couple of drinks? Okay, cool. I'm entirely uncredible. It's true. Oh yeah, so one of the things that's kind of important to note, like, I tweeted about it in more detail, but like, Poppy posts like not safe for work art in the safe for work sections of their Discord server. And then like, people rush to her defense. This is part of the problem about, like, weaponizing her audience, is that you can post like basically nude ass in a place in your server that has under 18s in it. And then one of the under 18s is like, hey, this actually made me uncomfortable. It was a shock to me that you posted this here. And then they just kind of keep doubling down and going like, it's fine for us to post lewd content where we welcome minors where we welcome minors. I can't show you the picture that was in, like, listen, the funniest thing happened. I posted about this on Twitter and was like, here are the pictures that she posted in the public, minors are allowed section of her Discord server. And she retweeted it, or she posted the picture like, by the way, this is the picture that's allegedly so terrible. And Twitter censored it and gave it a little, you have to click this in order to come through. So she was trying to prove, oh, this isn't lewd, this isn't sexual content. Like, yeah, it's pretty funny. So, but she weaponizes her audience to go, they like defend this hypersexual predatory behavior, basically. Like, or I guess, I don't know if you want to call it predatory exactly. I'll let you kind of decide. Like, it's creepy and it's overtly sexual in a way that makes people uncomfortable, right? Like, I would say it's creeper behavior to some extent. Like, sexual behavior that makes other people uncomfortable. Like, what's the common term that we would use nowadays is sex pest? Yeah, and then, getting your audience to go, oh no, it's like, children's eyes will clearly bleed, and then calling gay fesh abusive, screaming some support for Poppy. It's important to note, yeah, they've indoctrinated their followers to apply double standards. So, oh, this is harassment and it's bad for us to be doing this to Poppy because she's a trans woman who's employed and has BPD. Therefore, she's at risk of losing her job and her income, having real life harm come her way, worsened harassment online, her potentially killing herself, and someone else going out and killing her. Okay, so, but what, like, when you are targeting another, trans woman who has a job, who has BPD and could harm herself, like, okay, hold on, I gotta show you something. I gotta find it real quick. You're gonna notice another common thread with Poppy, and that's, it's fine when I do it. Like, it's not okay for my partners to do such and such, but it's okay for me to do it. I don't have to care about other people's BPD, but they have to care about mine. Oh, and then, yeah, speaking of weaponizing people in their inner circle, we are not going to talk about Sage very much because she prefers to be left out of the narrative. In this instance, we're just mentioning her because she started calling gay fesh a chaser, despite knowing that gay fesh has, like, trauma around being called a chaser. And it's not like she doesn't know about that or understand why it would be f***ed up for her to do that. Because, she's like, I don't think he's a chaser in the classical sense. I think the way he reacted to pushback is very chaser-like. But you can see her comments from 2022 where she's really super hardcore, like, it's super messed up that you're calling fesh a chaser. It's not okay. It's not applicable. It really bothers me. And so she deliberately, like, after having been his friend and knowing how bad that was, she starts calling him a chaser publicly. Yeah, and fesh is so obviously not a chaser. It's ridiculous. Let's move on to the ace phobia. So Zena's like, I keep saying Zena because it's the first name here. I guess that was intentional. Poppy's like, you never identified as ace during our relationship. It's not anywhere on your profiles. And also, sexual assault is about power, not sex. So I guess she's like, you were trying to exert power over me, whatever. But here are chat logs from months before this happened where No is like, I'm not super sexual physically. Like, she's like, I'm happy to play. I just don't care for me. She's like, I like to do it for other people again. And then, and then Poppy tries to fix No's asexuality by being like, yo, you might have just wrong HRT. Maybe you're not asexual. Maybe you just need to femme yourself more. Like, yeah, so I don't know, man. I mean, she probably wouldn't use the word fix, but that's kind of that's like the vibe. Publicly apologize. Let's speak to this BS. No one harassed her. No instances of harassment on her page, and she has posted no screenshots of harassment. Okay, she was trying to quietly weather what was happening and, like, hope that it would blow over at this point. Yo, hot tip, don't try to diagnose your partners. Yeah, maybe don't. So basically, yeah, like, there was a copy paste. You saw it earlier. I'm not gonna try to scroll back up and find it, but earlier there was that post that Poppy had retweeted that included No Flake's username in it. So yes, there has been a public, like, people being like, yo, I can't believe you would sexual harass this, whatever. Like, like, it's just been crazy. Haley, people are allowed to disagree with your actions. We are alleging sexual assault. People are going to take issue with that, especially because you tried the abuser tactic of Darvo and made a counterclaim with zero details. Like, and just to, again, No was just saying, like, listen, if you're trying to say that, like, it was super, super consensual and, like, oh, Poppy cares about asking first, like, Snowflake is not upset about the fact that Poppy initiated sex with her twice, but she's like, you didn't ask my permission. So if you're going to try to say that someone's consent was not fully there, then it would be the person who like wasn't asked if they wanted to do anything. So she says, I've never stated people with BPD cannot consent ever. I have said that my BPD and the status for relationship made my consent null and void, just as did the deception. That's kind of saying that a person with BPD will have a situation where because of their BPD, they can't consent. It doesn't mean that you can't consent ever, but it does mean that there are situations where you're saying, because I have a mental illness, or actually it's not a mental illness really, it's a behavioral disorder. You have a behavioral disorder that can be cured, and you are using that to say like, oh, my consent was null and void in this situation. Oh, she says, I feel like I couldn't say no because I would lose her. Therefore, I couldn't really consent. Then there's some major call out threads where Feyrin posted, and I don't think I'm going to read the whole thing, just talking about, I looked into this situation between Haley and Poppy and found that Haley was actually the one whose boundaries were being pushed and ignored, which to me is a very clear read of what happened. And then Gayfesh started posting about it. Gayfesh has multiple full threads going into the private conversations that he was having with Poppy and Zena. Like, basically that Poppy was they were both insisting that Gayfesh publicly come out on their side. And Gayfesh was like, you know what, I need to think about this a little bit more, and set a small boundary that was like, hey, I just need you to not message me for a couple days so that I can think about this. And they just kept going on. And he was like, okay, well, we're not friends anymore because you are incapable of honoring even the most minor of boundaries. Like, I just need to think about this a little bit. And yeah, Gayfesh has the copies of those logs. This is where Poppy finally shifts the narrative to, she's been saying sexual assault for weeks. And now she switches to saying this was, yeah, she's like, oh, yep, she raped me, and then tried to defend herself by making up a false counterclaim. She keeps posting, this person raped me. Like, this has become a full-on harassment campaign where you're tagging you're tagging her account and posting her real name, or her name that she intends to change it to. Yeah, and then she shifts her understanding, and she's like, I've actually decided that because the relationship was hanging by a thread and I would have done anything to keep it, then my consent was invalid because I would have said yes to anything to save the relationship. Again, she initiated the sex. No is asexual. She doesn't care about it. She will do it if you initiate, and she likes you well enough, apparently, but like, she doesn't care. And yeah, watching this narrative change in real time was crazy. Having your borderline managed means having the same awful thoughts come up over and over again, as well as the reaction to those thoughts, but having the restraint to not say those things out loud because you know they will scare people. Honey baby boo girl. That's not what managed BPD looks like. Because part of the thing is, if you're in treatment, you actually reduce your reactivity over time. That's what mindfulness is for. Like, that's why you do mindfulness practice. You build confidence by building mastery. You give yourself internal self-worth. Like, I would not personally want to be in a relationship with someone who's like, I desperately need you to constantly give me validation that you love me and you want me, or I will want to kill myself. Like, that's kind of like the position that she puts her partners in, which is just so much to put on a partner. But yeah, no, having managed borderline means you don't think crazy thoughts nearly as often, and you have the tools to react to them, but they do reduce over time. Like, the more you work on mindfulness, like reducing the size of your amygdala, that's why mindfulness is so good. That's why it's so highly recommended, by the way, is that if you do it consistently, it's been shown that like the part of your brain that does fight or flight, it literally physically gets smaller. So we manage our BPD by being able to check the facts and speak non-judgmentally, and use our distress tolerance skills to bring us to a place where we can use our emotion regulation skills. I really just want to push back on that narrative that managed borderline means you're going to continue to suffer and have the same awful thoughts, but you simply have the restraint to not say anything. Like, no, that's not managed BPD. That's called repression, dumbass. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to be a huge about it, but Jesus, like, it's easily one of the dumbest things I've ever heard someone say about BPD. And people say dumb shit about BPD. Okay, moving on. There's so much, guys. We're about halfway through, though. We're about halfway through. Yeah, so this is where she says Poppy has never done DBT, only EMDR, which again is a therapy that is not made for BPD and can make dissociative symptoms worse. And yeah, so Milena points out that DBT is universally considered to be the most effective form of managing BPD symptoms. So Milena had posted, Poppy isn't lying to you. Her pain is distorting her interpretation of the breakup. She does believe what she's saying fully, but the amount of pain she's in does not mean that what she's saying is accurate. Your pain can be valid and still be inaccurate. That's DBT. Literally, thank you for including that, Milena, because, you know, you can be in pain and that pain might not match the facts of the situation. Like, so your pain can be real and you're valid in experiencing it, and your feeling is still not accurate to the world. This is one of the ways that DBT differs from CBT to me, is this, you know, ability to look at the facts of the situation and whether that feeling is literally accurate to the situation. Like, does it make any sense for you to be angry in this situation or whatever? And then this person says, wow, that's a really convenient way to dismiss the emotions of someone with a personality disorder. Poppy pops in saying, love being gaslit. My feelings are real, but I don't know what happened to me. That isn't DBT. It is abuse under dialectical behavior therapy's name. Girl. I don't even know what to say about that. Oh, yeah. So let's, of course, dialectic DBT is dialectic behavioral therapy, and it means being able to hold two potentially contradictory concepts as being true and valid at the same time. Yeah. So in this context, it specifically means, you know, you can separate your emotions from the situation. Like, the objective reality can be one thing and your feeling can be completely the opposite, and you can hold both of them at the same time and then try to, you know, reconcile and hopefully bring your feelings more in line with reality. We want to experience reality as it is. It's one of the fundamental goals of DBT. Experience reality as it is, in the moment, non-judgmentally, mindfully, with wise mind. Like, finding the middle path between two difficult or opposing views. Knowing a thing and feeling a thing aren't always the same experience. That's an interesting quote. Poppy claims to teach DBT as part of treatment in her sessions, but she does not talk like a person who's done it before. Like, again. So because Poppy was publicly accusing someone of sexual assault and who clearly did not do those things to her, she was put on notice by her boss. This is why I said that this feels like kind of a post-mortem stream, is that she's already lost her job and also lost her White Leaf website. So it's like, there's not much more to say here. Like, you know, what else could possibly happen after this point, essentially? But yeah, she was friends with her boss for 20 years. And he put her on notice and was like, you know, you have to stop doing this. You need to delete this, or you need to stop posting it, or whatever. She's like, do I keep defending myself and speaking out against my even if I could lose my job? Or do I go dark, retain my job, and lose my way of being heard? I feel like I'm being silenced. Like, kind of. Stop doing it. Yeah, sometimes silence is the best policy. Yeah, so she's positioning this as an ultimatum. Oh, it's a classic abuser tactic. Stop publicly harassing a woman who you had a bad breakup with. Like, honestly, okay, here's my question. Do you think that in this situation, Poppy's behavior after the breakup, is it more consistent with the behavior that we see from sexual assault victims? Or is it more consistent with the behavior we see from jilted exes? You know what I mean? Like, from the drop on this, yeah, she burned this friendship of 20 years over this. It's an abusive platform, right? Yeah, we don't want you to just shut up forever. We want you to stop abusing your platform specifically. Oh, Poppy lost her job because she wouldn't accept an ultimatum, forcing her to never stream again. Like, honestly, if you're a therapist, I kind of feel like, why are you streaming? Like, if I were streaming and I was a therapist, I would keep that shit private. Like, maybe stop publicly abusing your platform. That would be the easy thing to do. But so this is a section where we talk about, you know, here are some people who are falling out with Poppy over this, or stopping affiliating with her over this. We've already talked about how Gayfesh was like really good friends with Poppy and Zena and stopped being friends with them basically over their behavior through this whole thing, like demanding that Gayfesh publicly come out in their defense, even though he was not convinced of her particular narrative, right? So she starts tagging Keffels and going, oh, you know, I've been harassed and whatever in the same way Keffels has been. She tags her multiple times, and then finally Keffels blocks her because she's been tagging her in about drama. Like, clearly you're okay. Are you really going to accuse people like me of seeking clout because we were trying to like cover your abusive behavior in the space? Like, while you're sitting there clout chasing, tagging Vosh and fucking Keffels, trying to get them to talk about your alleged SA, Keffels was like, no. Yeah, she did not want to deal with that. So, Jesus, like, speaking of clout chasing, though, Beyond Safe Words also is quoted saying, I'd hope to stay quiet about my having dissociated from ZMP's channel, but with everything coming out, silence feels like complicity. Because Beyond Safe Words was like, you know, I tried really hard to reconcile the red flags, and like Beyond Safe Words was like supporting Poppy and Zena longer than they're happy about now. So there's a link to that thread that's longer. As you can see, like, these people who are basically friends with and have personally contributed to the channel, somebody that, you know, she's known for 20 years, people who've been very close friends, BSW is she, her, thank you. But people who've been close friends with her throughout this process, you know, how many people do you think are wrong here is kind of the question. Do you think that everyone around Poppy is wrong and they're just attacking her because they don't like her over some petty something or other? You know, what's more likely, that a whole bunch of people are lying and making shit up about her in order to destroy her career? Or is she just legitimately a mess who has intense relationships and she is the reason that they blow up? Like, what's the common denominator here? Okay, as usual, Poppy handled it with her trademark grace, respect, and memes, saying, you know, Beyond Safe Words has spoken out against us based on Fesh's rumors. She also has taken to kind of dehumanizing us by calling us things like the fish. For a while, she was calling me the dragon until she realized that makes me sound really cool. And she decided to start calling me the lizard, which, like, all right. And her stated excuse for doing that is so that, oh, it's to make sure that you guys can't go name searching. But like, all we have to do is hop on our alt and look at your main page. You won't stop talking about us. And it's obvious. It's like, do you think that I don't know who you're talking about when you say the dragon? I don't need to go searching my name to find your posts about me. Like, yeah, I don't have to go searching very far at all because, like, she's just posting through it. Luxander the dragon. That's what I am, baby. Look at this. Listen, right now that we're in the fires. That's why the red in the background. We're in the fires right now. Yeah, bad at insults much. Like, oh, you had beers when you were in the group chat and you're, oh, the lizard. Like, okay, have fun, girl. Anyway, so yeah, she's like, oh, you missed the red flags because they weren't there, you silly git. Oh, you're all being emotionally manipulated by Fesh and Poppy's lying kid. And then a little section here about Kreese, who also was like a mod of Poppy and Zena's for 3 years. Kreese had been relatively quiet about leaving the foundation, but has shared some screenshots about her departure. And yeah, she's basically like, you kept changing your story and I'm really uncomfortable with that. And then Poppy says, the narrative never changed. My original claim of sexual assault via deception is still valid. The only difference is I realized that the event mirrored my CSA history, and I couldn't have consented in the first place. As far as versus SA, because social media decided to argue the validity of my assault, I stopped trying to be accurate in my language because it was confusing things, and I just decided to go with the stronger term. That isn't an inconsistency, that is a language change. So she deliberately started calling it because she wasn't getting enough traction calling it sexual assault. That's her stated reason is she changed her messaging in order to get more of an emotional reaction from people, essentially. Oh, and then there's this article from Annie, which has this as the picture at top. This is Snowflake, and of course the word is across her face. And this is like, up until, is it still pinned? Is it still pinned at the top of like, her Twitter? So, okay, she admits that some of the details of this article are off, but she encourages sharing the post. And so that, yeah, we're just gonna look at some excerpts. All those times Poppy complained to me about how she hated mean girl trans girls because they weaponized being hotter or passing better. That was just projection. So yeah, Poppy through this was posting like, I looked at my ex's other partner, and oh, she would have just like I was objectively her hottest partner. Money, power, a future, I'm hotter. Yeah, she's a idiot. Like, comparing herself. Her Patreon is pinned now. Lamau. That's funny. And Annie posts, for one, they could make frivolous accusations of misogyny against a survivor because she said that one of her partners was unattractive, while also deliberately ignoring the quote questionable consent part. It's a recurring theme for Fesh. That's the nickname that they've given Gay Fesh. Poppy's horrific framing of BPD, and it makes anyone who internalizes her perspective on it drill into the suffering aspect. So basically, this is several paragraphs of Annie being like, BPD is like having emotional third-degree burns all the time. Yeah, it's the emotional equivalent of having your body covered in third-degree burns. Even the slightest touch is often horrifically painful. Get over yourself. Get over yourself. Go to therapy. There is no way that your problems are that intense, and if you're like letting them be that intense, then it is genuinely partially the way that you think about it, where you're like, I'm just gonna catastrophize. Everything is so painful. Everything sucks all the time. Note that despite Haley's claim that Poppy had abused her, she has shown no signs of distress, nor does any of this seem to have impacted her life in any serious way. Conversely, Poppy has consistently been under extreme distress and suicidal ideation. And this can be seen in her tweets. Snowflake before was like, we saw the DMs of how her reactions are super short and clipped, and she's like constantly dealing with aggressive jealousy from Poppy, trying to control her behaviors, and it does harm her enough that she's like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't want to be with you anymore. And that was causing her harm. She just doesn't tweet about everything like a messy bitch. Like, good lord. Poppy is not the only person I've ever met in my life who's like this. It's like, girl, stop posting about your relationship on the Facebook timeline. Oh yeah, I've been having traumatic symptoms come up constantly. All reports of her show that she's behaving completely normal and showing no signs of any trauma. Cool. Oh yeah, accusing No of trying to paint Poppy's attraction to her and all the BPD stuff as inherently predatory. Remember, the cruelty is the point. And remember, favorite person is not like a real thing. It's like a colloquial thing that people like to talk about, but it's not like a symptom of BPD. Are you reducing the idealization and devaluation stuff down to just favorite person? Because if you're saying that, basically what you're saying is favorite person also means the person who I hate. Because idealization and devaluation includes this part where you're just like, you've never done anything good for me. Like, you've never done anything like, oh, I do all this work. You barely even contribute. You didn't even try. Like, it's devaluation. Oh yeah, and that's where they go. This is where they go into, oh, I lied about the sex stuff. This is definition of essay. We have already debunked this. No need to go into it. Ruan posted like that they live in a city that's near, like, Poppy keeps sharing her GoFundMe and it has her city listed, and Ruan was like, look, she lives in a city close to me. Wouldn't that be terrible if she was negatively affecting people in our shared physical community? And Poppy basically was like, you just tried to dox me. We're going to report you and get your Patreon and Ko-Fi taken down. And by the way, Ruan is like a homeless trans man. It's like Googling Tacoma to Seattle and calling it doxing Vosh. True. Oh, yeah, well, whatever. Ruan can just switch over to Cash App or PayPal. Yeah, it's just like she lives 15 minutes away from me. I don't want her to harm people in my local community. You know, post Ruan's whatever, block it, whatever, report it. Oh, there's an argument floating around that reporting that person's financial links is, quote, attempted murder. Oh, because you're trying to cut off a homeless person from one of their very few ways of making any income. You know, blah, 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 attempted murder, doxing, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Oh my God. This is kind of skipping ahead a tiny, tiny bit, but Poppy was kicked off of the White Leaf. So, here, this is a White Leaf website. My website is a White Leaf website, and I was kind of wondering what was going to happen with her having a membership, like, or not a membership. She's a client of White Leaf, was a client. And then she got kicked off of it. But, you know, ooh, she has PayPal, so donations can still be taken. Going after someone's income is fine now then. Good to know. Yeah, Fesh pushes back on this. Oh yeah, so then Annie makes this big call to harassment, basically, where she's like, I may not be interested in inane blood sports, but I never said everyone else didn't have to be. And then she just starts posting all these people like, oh, there's Poppy's made frivolous accusations of sexual harassment against Poppy and Luxander for no reason. Just I'm on the list. No reason, no explanation. Just cool. I laughed when I saw that. But yeah, she's encouraging harassment against people. Let's talk about Dormiu. Who was the 19-year-old who alleged sexual impropriety? Okay. Yeah, I made the VIP list. True. So let's read this. It's a very recent post from this person, Dormiu. I need to make an apology to Poppy and Zena. I was a bad friend to Zena, and I lied about them and their fiance, resulting in Poppy losing her job, as I complained to her employer. Interesting. So Dormiu is like, oh, now claiming that what they were claiming was false initially. Interesting. Wonder where that came from. So the original Tumblr reblog with all the screenshots shows basically Dormiu was invited to come to Poppy and Zena's house, and at one point, Poppy came out of the shower, or she came out of the bedroom, looking for pants, and she was wearing a shirt and underwear, and Dormiu averted their gaze. Oh yeah, Dormiu uses idits, right. I think I was saying they, them. My bad. Idits. So basically, you can go through and read all of this. Again, it's linked in the document, but basically, Dormiu is asexual and uses its pronouns, and it averted its gaze when Poppy came out of the room with underwear on, and they were like, or it was like, oh, I don't want to look at that. And Poppy was like, you and your weird ace shit. So again, with the weird hostility toward asexual people. And then later, Dormiu's original account on this page basically says, later, Poppy came out of her room wearing only underwear and no top and no pants, and deliberately sat a few feet away from me, facing me, until Dormiu looked up and noticed that she was in a state of undress and was shocked and upset by that. And Poppy was sitting there basically smirking, thinking that it's funny. And then Zena came in the room and was like, what just happened? And they laughed about it. So they have at the time, 18-year-old who they were showing hospitality in their home, subjecting them to uncomfortable sexual situations, laughing at them, being acephobic, and telling them that, oh, you're just being such a prude. And also Poppy made objectifying comments about Dormiu's body, because Dormiu, I guess, has breasts, and Poppy was like, I'm jealous of your tits because of my dysphoria. Making comments about another trans person's body in that way is pretty uncomfortable. So basically just repeatedly making Dormiu uncomfortable in a sexual way. Just again, like we were saying earlier, it's the same as the stuff that's happening on Twitter. You're making people uncomfortable in a sexual way. Generally, we call that sexual harassment or sex pest behavior. It's uncomfortable and it's not okay. And then Poppy's response is, oh, this kid is mad because we didn't give it money for immigration papers. This is entirely retributive, just like my ex. Again, think about that common denominator. Who's the common denominator? Yeah, the ace phobia is a red flag for predatory behavior because it's they expect people to be available to them sexually, not necessarily directly, but at least sharing sexuality with them. It's super uncomfortable. So Dormiu was basically just trying to publicly be I misjudged Poppy. Oh, I'm genuinely sorry to the people I let down by listening to her and her partner and not them. So people had a whisper network and they tried to warn Dormiu before it went to spend time with them in person. And it's I'm so sorry for not listening to you. I should have believed you all. Oh, this person saw boobs in a non-sexual context, admits that it's not a big deal. Dormiu does say, I'm not opposed to non-sexual nudity in general, but this was not okay because it was not consensual to me, and it was we hadn't talked about it. And people keep saying, oh, Poppy has every right to be nude in her own home. Yeah, when no one's there, she does. Even if you're literally, even your partner, if your partner is uncomfortable with you being naked, unless you talk about it first, then yeah, in your own home, you might not be able to be nude. And Poppy has convinced her audience that if you're a house guest, you should just have to deal with your host being nude without having discussed it at all. And yeah, maybe you think nudity should be desexualized, but it's not yet now. So yeah, of course it's going to be kind of shocking to see someone with their tits out all of a sudden. Yeah, it's not about sexualization of trans bodies, it's about consent. It's not, yeah, maybe she was sitting there not being sexual, but she still was using her body to make someone uncomfortable. She was using her nudity to make someone uncomfortable. Oh yeah, Darvo in action. She starts claiming that, like, this is a person switching stuff on you. My girlfriend just flashed me, and by flashed, I mean I looked over and she was changing into PJs and she didn't announce it to the household first. Thanks, Zena. Simply being topless isn't an offense. You should have said something if it bothered you so much. It literally said, I am bothered by this. I told Poppy before that I was not comfortable seeing her in any state of undress, and after she was told that, she walked into the room I was in, knowing she was not just topless, but pantsless, and they made fun of me for my discomfort. Also disrespecting Dormiu's identity, because Dormiu, I think, identifies basically as a dog. In their Twitter profile, it specifically says, like, I am not a person, I am a dog. And I'm like, cool, that's neat. It was very easy for me to accept that identity when I saw it. They identify as Therian. It identifies as Therian. So Zena goes, I hate to break it to you, but I don't play into people's bullshit. You are a person, because Dormiu doesn't like being called a person. Your gender and Therianthrope beliefs do not erase that you are human and have personhood. I'm sorry. Let's just swap out some words really quick. Your gender beliefs do not erase that you are a man and have a... Like, it's literally exactly the same shit that any... Like, I made this entire video before. I made a whole video saying you cannot say the shit that you're saying about xenogenders, because all you're doing is repackaging the same transphobic arguments and just directing them against a smaller group of people. But it's still the same transphobic arguments. If you just swap out the words, wow, that's really dumb. I'm sorry, Poppy, that's really dumb. Like, I just want you to know that that's really dumb. Oh yeah, referencing Annie's post. Note that laws outlawing cross-dressing were based around the framing of cross-dressing as sexual, and that people did not consent to seeing in public, much like how Dormiu frames Poppy's body. Like, okay, cool. I refuse to, in any universe, I refuse to believe that this caused any serious distress. The rape culture. Like, that's the shocking thing about it, the rape culture. It's like if a guy at work flashed his at you, and then he was like, and did it like flopping it around like it was a non-sexual, like he didn't have a hard-on, right? Like this is a thing that like people have done on set before. Like guys have done it who are actors have been like, bleh. And it's like, just because your wasn't hard and you weren't like it off or whatever doesn't mean that wasn't you sexually harassing me. Whatever his name is who plays Jack Harkness, John Barrowman, I heard that he did that on set before. But yeah, let's continue here. We're making our way to Poppy's hypersexual, a condition developed due to severe trauma. So this is like just being pointlessly cruel, framing her as predatory and deviant. Okay, here's my thing. Nobody would be accusing you of being predatory or deviant if you would stop doing predatory shit. You know, like, again, I know that there's so much bad optics that go into accusing a trans woman of predatory behavior, and that's part of why it took such a long time for this stream to happen. Like, we tried for a long time to figure out how exactly to say this, because it is, you know, it's like hard to talk about trans women's sexual impropriety, you know? We talked about it before with Sophie from Mars and her using BDSM in order to abuse her partners. You know, it is difficult to talk about this. That doesn't mean that trans women are incapable of being predatory, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't call out that behavior if and when we see it. So, yeah, I mean, if you are exposing minors to sexual content in your server, and then you're exposing your sexual parts of your body, and like, yes, I'm sorry, we still live in a society where having tits is sexual. I refuse to believe, as a hypersexual trans woman, that you do not get sexual kicks out of having boobs. Yeah, so you expose yourself sexually to an 18-year-old. Like, I'm sorry, like, stop doing that shit if you don't want to be viewed as predatory. Maybe you don't mean to be predatory. Maybe you don't mean to be doing that. But once it's pointed out to you that is part of a pattern of predatory behavior, your response to that should be like, oh, I better stop doing that, instead of doubling down and going, yeah, but actually it's okay for me to do that. Like, yeah, like, it's not predatory, but even if it was, it would be okay. You know what I mean? Poppy is 42 years old, just as like a reminder for the age when we start talking about this, like the way that she speaks about young people and the way that she speaks to younger people. She is 42. That's like the establishing shots for the Dormiu, right? Now, Zena and Poppy said on their stream that they were going to do a segment on, quote, the dog, which is how they refer to Dormu. They were like, yeah, we're going to expose you on stream, which is a problem because Dormu is a transgender who is a refugee from the UK. It has a very conservative family back there. And so posting about its personal data could actually jeopardize its ability to be in the country and like not be sent back to the UK. So here's where things get real. So Zena and Poppy post, Dormu, if you want a truce with us, you get to ask for nothing. You will remove everything about us. Post that you took an awkward situation and tried to frame a trans woman as a predator over it, and you will block and cease all interactions with the Suicide Squad. I'm not even going to get into that right now. I'm so sorry. And no flake, you will also admit that you were one of the people that contacted Poppy's work and got her fired over your lies and baseless internet speculation. And lastly, you will contact Poppy's former employer and rescind your complaint. Only then will we not do a segment. Your move. I want to be clear that that is blackmail. She's like, I'm going to do a stream about you and tell people private details about you that could harm you. And I will do that unless you capitulate to what I want. The definition of blackmail is different in different places, and the punishment is different in different places. But trying to force someone to do something for you by using leverage like this, yeah, it's public blackmail. It's literal blackmail. This is why she was dropped from the White Leaf service, by the way. Like, this is the specific thing. White Nervosa tweeted about it and was like, hey, this is the specific part of our terms of service that their channel was, that their website was terminated for. And yeah, it's like if you commit a crime in your locality, she keeps doubling down on it. Like, this deal extends to any of you who are part of this little hate brigade. If you want out and to never be mentioned on stream, simply repent, confess your sin, and disappear. And then she says, if we do a segment, everything comes out. This is an all or nothing. Twitter, Tumblr, everything. If we find anything anywhere or even so much as a like on someone's post, the deal's off. And then she posted this: keep calm and eat chocolate. Remember that Dormu identifies as a dog and not a person. So she's basically saying drink bleach, effectively. Dormu agreed to go through and unlike all these tweets and delete them and everything. And then Dormu, she keeps quote tweeting going, I found a bunch of tweets you missed. And Dormu's like, thanks, I'm going through like each individual thing right now. I don't have any tools and I'm staying up late in order to get this done. Yeah, repent or I will talk about you on stream. Oh, I think she's saying dog like she called you lizard to be demeaning. Okay, specifically Dormu identifies as a wolf, but it's like, I know that it also refers to itself as a pup and stuff like that, so I'm just sorry. I'm not trying to downplay their identity. Its identity. Coastal wolf. Okay. Yeah, Dorm could have been deported if Poppy had gone hard enough here. Like, again, a 42-year-old woman harassing a teenager. Like, Dormu is 19 now, but that's still, like, you are a brand new adult. You do not have the context to deal with this. And so that kind of puts this apology in a different light, doesn't it? Oh, I'm so sorry to Poppy and Zena. I was literally extorted. And then Poppy responds with a backhanded apology, saying, I want to apologize for making you uncomfortable when you were staying at my home. That was never in my intention. Where does that said, I do not appreciate the way the discomfort was brought up in text messages. Like, yeah, like backhanded apologies. Moving on to her parasocial media presence. She initially claims like, oh, people near or in their 30s stop dating 19-year-olds, challenge rating impossible. Interesting. I just feel like it's worth pointing out that Annie tries to say that Haley was dating a partner who almost got Poppy killed. That's because Poppy is like, I'm so suicidal over literally seeing my metamors in public. Crazy shit. Anyway, so here we're going to talk about Poppy and the way that she flirts publicly. Like, I'm a big fan of those shorts on you and off of you. This is not her partner. I am literally an angelic being trapped in the body of a mortal. And then she responds, I'd still ride you. This is just how she talks to other trans women in public on Twitter. Either of those would be great in my mouth. Like, speaking of chaser, I mean, like, I'm not saying she's a chaser, but I am saying that these are the kind of replies that I have seen from chasers. And not even just chasers, I guess. I see like cis men publicly post this kind of shit on cis women's posts as well. Like, I would like those shorts on or off. Like, okay. Anyway, She starts flirting with someone who is trying to flirt with their own partner in public, basically. I don't want to read all this. Let's see. Oh yeah, she basically like is bugging this person about posting lewds or something, and that person got uncomfortable and blocked her, and she starts mocking them. She just doesn't really take rejection well. It's like that's kind of part of what we're looking at. Like, yeah, she just doesn't deal with being rejected super well. She was demanding nudes from me on Twitter. We're getting to a point where it's like, I cannot read all of these. It is late at night. Someone just posted, "Can you suck while fasting?" And I think that that's kind of like just a shit post. And then Poppy says, "I would like to help you find out." And the person replies, "Gross. God, I get tired of oversensitive queers." Like I got blocked for being a sex pest at someone. Yeah, I was very uncomfortable with a 40-year-old soliciting me for sex when I'm not a sexual person. It was incredibly inappropriate. True. Yeah, and by the way, that person is 20. Person was 20 at the time. So you know how we were just talking about how Poppy posts lewd content in her server and then tells, she has her girlfriend tell the minors there that it's not a big deal and that they shouldn't be uncomfortable with it. And then she exposed her body to an 18-year-old. Well, let's talk about how Poppy talks to other people in that age range. Poppy and young women on Twitter. "Try not to at me next time, thanks. Wait, you're 42. I'm 25. Please leave me alone. LOL. Thank you." So remember, she said this: "People near or in their 30s, stop dating 19-year-olds. Challenge rating impossible." Well, I guess it's okay if you're in your 40s. "Carnal need for comfort where I'm touched and told I'm beautiful. I volunteer as tribute." That's a 23-year-old. Poppy states that she doesn't date anyone younger than her kid, who is 23 at this time, or she doesn't try to pursue people younger than her kid. And let me be clear, I still think that's messed up. I think if you're 42 years old and a therapist who is on the internet and like doing all this publicly, I don't know that there's any situation where you're a 42-year-old therapist in this position and you are dating or pursuing 23-year-olds and that's not up. So I think that on its own, that is not acceptable behavior. But if she were going younger than that, then that would make her outright a liar because she states that her boundary is, only 23 and up. Or I guess the kid might be 24 now. "Am I your type of girl?" Poppy says, "Yes." That's another 23-year-old. "Happy New Year." "Pretty girl." A 21-year-old. "The trans community overly fetishizes girls while playing out the same tired games around neo-vaginas," whatever. Someone comments, "Girl and girl are both amazing, I've heard." Poppy says, "Want to find out?" That's a 19-year-old. That's a 19-year-old human person. "I sometimes think that you guys don't like me and that I'm not as close with people as I think." Poppy says, "Be my friend, bitch." That's a 19-year-old. Oh, and remember what Poppy said up top where the boundaries between types of relationships are blurry for her and she might very well invite a friend to her house in order to have sex with them? Like, the pattern, guys, the pattern. "Every older white guy looks like this to me." "You sure you're not a lesbian?" "Very sure I'm not." Weird. Weird. If every older white guy looks like that, how do you like guys? I mean, it's a good look for a lot of guys, and one I like, TBH, is just hella popular. Poppy says shrug. So she's like, yeah, it's again, like she wants people to be sexually available to her. That's the thing. She's got the Leo madness. "So I'm taking it you guys really liked this?" Tummy picture. "I mean, I like it and I'm very gay." "Oh God, I so would. Not even a second thought." "Have you considered lesbianism?" "Not sure either is my type." "You are literally killing me." "I tend to have this effect on people." "Stop it." "Damn, she's tall. Lamau." Like, what a dodge. Damn, she's tall. Okay, so this is, I think, another post by this person. "I tried, but I'm too old and you don't like girls." So it's like, have you had a conversation where it's established that you're too old? Yeah, trying to proposition a couple here where one of the people in the couple is 19. "Great, I look forward to all of us meeting." "Yo, I'm there." Girls be like, "We're just good friends." "For pennies a day, you can adopt a puppy. You can make sure she gets food, water, and her own crate to sleep in." Let's see. "I still need a puppy girl. I got that dog in me." We're getting close to the end, you guys. But this is her having like a long exchange with a young girl who's like a puppy girl or whatever. "I wish I could rub your tummy. If you were my puppy girl, I could. When I move and have the time, I think we could make this wish a reality. You just let me know when you're ready and I'll get you a nice collar and a tag and crate. When you coming over?" Puppy girl hours. So Poppy, it's so interesting. Poppy says 24/7 dom-sub relationships are rarely psychologically healthy, but she also apparently wants to play out her possessiveness kink in public 24/7. Weird. Counterpoint, they are hot. Can be, often are not. TLDR, I really want to play with you. I also want to know you as you, not a puppy. So again, with the weird, like, Therian hate, I guess. Yeah, so that, at the time, that person's profile said 19, puppy girl at heart. This went back at least as far as March, which means that that person was actually 18. So Poppy, again, like, Poppy was 41 flirting with an 18-year-old, trying to be like, I'm gonna get you a crate and a puppy collar, come be a puppy. Yeah, so she tried to push back on the fact that I said that she kept going after barely legal trans girls. She says, I don't date out of my audience. But then again, earlier, remember, she said, I become friends with people through my stream show, and then sometimes I f my friends. Like, okay, so you're flirting with an 18-year-old. That person has blocked her now. There's a question of, is this a real problem? And we wanted to point out that not all of these interactions are like overtly sexual. Some of them are very clearly sexual, while others are just kind of nebulously uncomfortable. And she's gonna argue against this, you know, but like the objective fact is that this is happening. Like you are flirting with people who literally just turned 18. And by the way, when I say barely legal, 19 also counts as barely legal. Like, yeah, if you're like on the websites where they're like, ooh, this teen, she's only 19, like, yes, that you are engaging in like this, like, ooh, barely legal kind of vibes, okay? Like, we don't need to pretend like this is not what's happening. Okay, now we're getting to something that is like really, really awful. And I honestly don't even know if we're gonna have time to go fully into it, because there's an entire section here that's like accusations about her kid accusing her of being abusive, basically. And this is the part where things, for me, it was like, okay, a lot of the rest of this is just weird sex pest behavior, whatever. If the community doesn't seem to have a problem with it, like the leftist community seemed to be okay with her going after young people like this, like young women in this way. So whatever, I was just like, okay, I guess we're just gonna let her be a sex pest. Cool. But this is the biggest yikes. And if you have any experience with like abusive parents, I would say take care reading through this. And if you have abusive parents, you will see through this situation super easily. The kid has POTS. Their adult kid, who's like 23 or 24, has POTS, which I have. It is the biggest disability that I have. I overheat very easily. My heart rate is inappropriately high. I have to drink a ton of water and eat a ton of salt in order for me to not have painful heart palpitations, like chest pains. You can't eat big meals, or you have to be careful eating big meals because it will change your heart rate and stuff in a way that is harmful. And yeah, like you need to eat and drink water and sleep well and control your temperature in order for you to not have like a debilitating, like I need to lay on the floor for the rest of the day kind of situation. It's not a joke. It is the worst part of my set of disabilities. So yeah, you can have fatigue from it, brain fog, nausea, vomiting, you know, excessive sweating, you know, there's like a ton of symptoms, and there are certain things that make it worse, like being in a hot environment or standing and doing a lot of physical labor. And if you haven't had sufficient fluid and salt intake, like if you've been skipping meals. So in these screenshots, and like we might not have time to go through many of them, but Spawn talks about being overworked to the point of heat exhaustion because the air conditioner was not working for months, apparently. They had restricted access to the bathroom, even when they're trying to take a cold shower to regulate their body temperature. They were being forced to do chores all day. When they were paying rent to live with Poppy and Zena, being deprived of food because Poppy and Zena prioritized the rules about who's allowed to be in the kitchen at what time, over Spawn's health. And of course, Poppy and Zena eating food, drinks, and snacks that the kids specifically got for itself. Like, for example, if I were to buy sports drinks like Gatorade, I would be like, dude, these are for me, and anyone who lives with me, you really, really, really need to ask first, because I got these to regulate my blood. Like, I need to regulate my, basically, fluid blood content. Basically, like, Poppy here is downplaying triggers. She's saying, oh, that's a bullshit excuse. When Spawn said jokes aren't funny. Poppy called them too sensitive. Basically, Spawn is trying to tell, this is Poppy, the red blackout is Poppy, trying to say, hey, it's not acceptable for me to be not allowed in the kitchen. I need to eat. Like, I should be allowed to get food when I need it. And then they say, no, we have a schedule in our house. You need to follow that. Zena doesn't get personal time with constant interruption. Babe, if you live in a house with other people or an apartment with other people, you don't get alone time in the kitchen and living room unless everybody is gonna be gone. You know, you don't get to be like, I've decided I'm going to hang out in the living room and get super pissed off if you need to walk through the living room to get to the kitchen. Like, you're literally not allowed to be in the kitchen. No, if you need alone time, go to your room and close the door. You know what? There are some people who the only alone time they get, because if you share your room with your partner, there's no guarantee that you're going to get alone time. Yeah, guess what? Sometimes the only alone time you get is when you take a shower. Go take a shower if you need alone time. Take a long bath. Lay in there. Cool? But you don't get to just go, no, the entire living room is mine. Yeah, Poppy is working from home and holding the therapy sessions in their bedroom, so Zena has to hang out in the living room, I guess. But yeah, sorry, you don't get alone time in the living room. But yeah, oh, you're not allowed to leave your room when Zena doesn't want to deal with you in the kitchen, basically. I was gonna go make spaghetti. Zena told me to make something quick because they needed food. Like, they wouldn't let me use jelly on, like, to make one peanut butter jelly sandwich after they told me I wasn't allowed to eat spaghetti. Yeah, she does therapy sessions in her bedroom from working from home. Yeah, she works remotely, or worked remotely. She doesn't have a job now. Basically, Zena yells at Spawn for basically nothing. Spawn, this is so painful. This one in particular, like, is one of the more painful ones because Spawn's like, hey, they want to put in a baby gate so that the dog will not come in my room because they keep getting pissed off about the dog being in my room. And we got the baby gate and it hasn't been taken out of the box yet. So I decided to go ahead and put it up to be nice and do the thing that they said that they wanted to be done. And then Zena proceeds to yell at me for 30 minutes, threatens to kick me out of the house because I, quote, can't follow instructions, and talks about how I haven't been doing my chores and they've had to pick up the slack. I'm sorry. I just want to be totally clear about this right now. As far as I know, Zena has not had a job through this entire process. So right now, Zena is threatening to kick out Spawn when Spawn is paying rent and Zena isn't. And I hadn't considered that point until just now, but like, Zena is not paying rent because they don't have a job. They have migraines. So Poppy is supporting Zena and Poppy, and then Spawn is expected to pay rent. And Zena thinks that they can threaten to kick out Spawn. House meetings. Every house meeting I ask for unrestricted access to the kitchen. Every house meeting my parents tell me my access to the kitchen isn't restricted. Every time I go in the kitchen outside of my allotted time, I get yelled at. And this time, when I brought up that thing mentioned at house meetings, Zena went, we didn't say that. If you want something changed, you have to bring it up at a house meeting. The gaslighting is real. And then Zena, you know, being ableist and saying, you're not allowed to use tone indicators like /genuine in order to indicate tone. And Spawn's like, I just wanted you to not assume that I was being rude and freak out. And so it's like, yeah, I hate people like this. When you're like, I'm literally trying to make you not pissed off. And you're like, well, you can't do that. And like, okay, I'm like trying to do things in a way that you're not going to take issue with. And you're still taking issue with fucking everything. It's like really, really upsetting to me. This is the part of the story where it starts to rub against me wrong. Where like most of this has kind of been an intellectual, like, yeah, this behavior is not good. We want to discuss this. Like, I get mad in this section of this. Like, as someone who had an abusive mom and who was my mom, here's what my mom would do. She would leave on Saturday. She wouldn't tell me where she was going. She'd just be gone all day. And on the whiteboard in the kitchen, there would be a list of chores for me to do. And I did all those chores. Because you know what? The expectation was if I didn't do those chores, by the time she got back, she would hit me. So my situation was a little bit different from Spawn's because Spawn is just being tortured emotionally and psychologically by, you know, being yelled at and like not allowed to leave their bedroom and stuff like that. And it gets worse from this point. But like, yeah, the whole your entire existence is to do chores for me. If you don't get the tone indicators, just ask the other person to type the entire word out. Yeah, but I don't think that would have sufficed. I think even if the Spawn had typed out /genuine, Zena would have still taken issue with it because a person like Zena, like the whole thing is that you can never do anything up to their standard. They're going to keep changing the standard. So here, speaking of that, Poppy is telling the Spawn, you don't have a job, therefore full stop, you have to do any chore that I ask you to do when I ask you to do it, basically. You have no job and are not in school. Sorry, telling me things day of is fine, but it's a more you can't expect me to drop everything to do whatever it is. I absolutely can. You have no job and you're not in school. If you want to talk further, come out here. Accommodations need to be discussed ahead of time. It's not fair to make boundaries and expect them to be held to when people don't even know what they are. I've told you guys before, but it's understandable that you'd forget. Kid drops chocolate on the floor and gets yelled at, and like an argument turns into a screaming match because they were worried about the dog getting the chocolate off the floor, which is, I guess, the reason why they got the dog door. This kid is paying for rent out of their trust fund from when their mom died when they were a kid, and they're being treated this way, expected to do 7 hours of chores during the day. And they also, at various points down here, start saying, well, the expectation is that you need to be working on finding a new job for the entire 8 hours of the day. This is a whole little section about basically Zena used the toaster oven and didn't check to make sure there wasn't plastic around it, and they decided to blame the kid for allegedly leaving something plastic near the toaster oven. Meanwhile, the kid is like, well, I used the toaster oven earlier in the day and I had to move stuff away from it in order to use it, so I don't know how the tortillas ended up there. But if Zena burned the tortilla bag, it's kind of Zena's fault. But no, so basically they tried to accuse the kid of like doing chemical warfare by on purpose leaving the tortilla near the toaster oven, and then Zena used the toaster oven. So yeah, they keep saying these are cherry picked and out of context. Okay, I don't really care. Like I don't know what context you think makes any of this behavior okay, but I don't think that there's any context that would make these behaviors okay. Restricting this kids' access to the kitchen and eating food that they wanted for themselves, and like refusing to buy food for the kid when they're out shopping, like basically not replacing things. There's zero justification for any of this, And by the way, also, I was abused by a parent. I can see through all this like, oh, but my kid was the problem actually, and oh, they're just making shit up, and like, girl, this is so tired. Like, if you've been in the situation, you can see what it is. I've been abused, but my abuser never snapped at me the way Zena will berate Spawn for literally any reason. Yeah, like literally any excuse. It's just like, I'm gonna start yelling at you. It's very obvious what it is. You don't even have to be very well schooled to be able to see. I guess my parents would be making me pay rent if I didn't already contribute to the household income. But at least my parents don't randomly decide I won't be allowed to eat for the rest of the night. Yeah, that's one of Spawn's friends. I don't have a job. I'm expected to do chores whenever they want. Leaving me, with a list of things. You need to find a job and get up at 10 a.m. each day. Discord needs to be closed from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Focus on finding a job. Failure to abide by these will result in throttled internet, paying for your own phone. So they start throttling Spawn's internet and cutting off access to it. They throttle this kid's internet. I used to get, my mom would like take away something that I cared about, and then, because this is the thing, and I think that this happened to Spawn as well. My mom would like decide that I was grounded and she would take something from me, like my brand new Nintendo DS, and then I would be grounded, and then I would be on my good behavior. I was a good kid anyway. My mom made shit up all the time, but I would be on my good behavior, and like the grounding, quote unquote grounding, would be extended for like no apparent reason. She had my DS in her drawer for 6 months, literally. Like, I was grounded from my Nintendo DS for 6 months. And this is the same kind of thing that Spawn is describing, is like having your internet taken away and like, oh, I'm only given 2 hours of internet a day. Or they keep saying, oh, you need to go to the library and use the internet at the library. They start trying to say, oh, you need to be in bed at a certain time or awake at a certain time. And Spawn is like, can you at least give me until Monday to figure things out, like change my sleep schedule? And like, I don't agree with all of this. And then Poppy says, it's not about agreeing with it. It is my rules for the house. I'm willing to negotiate some, but I am not willing to change some of these. She talks to this kid like they're her employee that she hates. Yeah. So to be clear, Poppy at this time had a job as a therapist, and she was paying whatever, her portion of the rent and food. Zena has not had a job, I think, the entire time I've known them, and so they don't pay any rent. Spawn, who was living with them at this time, is paying rent out of their trust fund from when their mom died years ago. and so is paying rent and is being expected to do all these chores, and like this isn't about agreeing with it. It is my rules for the house. It's like, what kind of shitty Airbnb is this where you're paying exorbitant amounts of money and also you're expected to, like, they expect you to change the sheets and make sure all the dishes are in the dishwasher, and then they still charge you a $300 cleaning fee when you get out of there. Like, truly landlord behavior. This is super weird. Yeah, like, I can't imagine being like, I'm an adult and I pay you rent and you think that you can tell me when to go to bed? You think that you can throttle my internet? This is more demanding than a lot of jobs. Yeah. What a way to treat your own kid. Yeah, and I guess I don't know if it makes any difference, but Spawn is not Poppy's biological kid. Poppy got with Spawn's mother when she was like 3 months pregnant or something. And then Poppy was the parent that stepped up, whatever, and then their mom died. And so Poppy was then the only adult for Spawn, who is currently like 23 or 24. Yeah, Spawn says, stress is getting to me. My hair is falling out again. Been there. Of course, the rules about who's allowed to be in the kitchen at one time are more important than, this kid trying to get any of their chores done on any schedule. So Spawn asks, can you please get some of these food things for me so that I can eat food other than pasta, because you get so pissed off about me cooking things in the kitchen and taking too long. Zena says, no, the rules are not changing. Fridge cleaning needs to be completed first. And so they're basically like, we're not going to buy you the food that you need because we've decided that you need to clean stuff first. Like, you literally don't get to have food. Yeah, fridge cleaning before you're allowed to eat. Maybe a person with POTS would do a better job cleaning the fridge if they were provided with food, maybe? I don't know. What a concept. We're getting close to the end here, guys. Zena said, I'm starting to feel like your parent and not your housemate. Like, okay, if you are married or like if you're engaged to someone who has a kid, then you are to some extent probably signing up to be their parent. But also, maybe if you would stop trying to dictate everything that the kid is doing and talk about like, oh, what Poppy's adult kid and my kid too did to us was emotional abuse. So it's one of those convenience things where Zena treats them as their kid when it's convenient, but then at other times when it's inconvenient, they're like, well, you're not my kid. I shouldn't have to pick up after you. Like, it's just so mean. That's one of the things that I hate about this. And like, I've regressed. This is how an abused child thinks about their parent. Like, I just can't believe you're so mean. That's kind of how it feels. It's like, why? Just because you don't understand when you're being abused by someone, you're like, I don't understand why you're acting this way. And so mean is like the easy word to reach for. Why are you being so mean? But it's just so mean. Oh, the flip-flopping back and forth is crazy. Oh, this killed me. When I first saw this screenshot, and this killed me. Spawn says, yeah, I miss when my mom was nice to me. That kind of fits in that same framework of like, I don't know why my mom's being so mean. I miss when she was nice. Because Poppy wasn't always like this, Spawn says basically everything was fine until like particularly like 2020, 2021. So this is like I guess a pretty recent, I guess maybe you could call it escalation. But yeah, that's hard to get through right there. Here's another thing. They will leave like these typed out long lists. I think this is an expectation of like, this is something that's meant to be done in like one day or maybe only a couple days. Like, oh, let's take vacuum and break it down into a bunch of different steps and make sure you're doing this super meticulously. Like, honestly, this level of meticulousness, I tried to work at a house cleaning company for a few weeks and I was not thorough enough for their preference. But this is the kind of checklist you get if you work at like a high dollar house cleaning business. So not only is Spawn paying rent, but Spawn is also being their maid, which is wild. No exceptions for breaks/eating, but then they immediately say breaks/eating must be done in a timely fashion. Like, that's directly contradictory. Yeah, they make these printouts of chores. And then look at that. Like, they were like, oh, I remembered another thing. Miscellaneous, take out all trashes and replace bags at the bottom of the page. If tasks are not done, then Spawn will wake up early the next day to complete these items and still have all of the next day's chores to do. Note, this is a household chore and not the time for blank to clean their own room. They must take care of their own room on their personal time. Man, they keep adding extra steps in the task and then are confused about why it's taking longer. My parents say we want you to focus all your attention on getting a job. Hey, can you quiet down because I'm taking a timed test? Suck it up and deal. It's for a job. We will try. And then they're literally screaming at each other and the kid can't focus on a test. Like, y'all want the kid to get a job, but you're limiting their access to the internet and not making it possible for them to focus on getting a job like you allegedly want them to. Poppy and Zena will argue that this is a normal, healthy relationship, insisting we simply don't have the context and we didn't see how they would make up afterwards. Many relationships handle these kind of conflicts without screaming. Weird concept. So then they're telling Spawn, you know, you need to start handwriting your logs even if you don't have access to the internet. So we're blocking off your access to the internet and then expecting you to do more work because we just don't want you to have access to the internet. Please be aware that this is not a negotiation and we are not accepting any excuses. You have lots of books in your room from the library, so it's not true that you couldn't do anything. You also have the ability to leave the house and go to the library and still have your phone that you can use. Yeah, getting the internet back. Basically just didn't have the internet for like months. So yeah, I feel like those are the main things. And like Zena just being overtly cruel, like, what is wrong with you? Friday is a work day. You asked about Friday. Like, what do you mean what is wrong with me? Why are you attacking me for no reason? This isn't attacking. You keep changing the story. Like, Zena acts like, why is Zena this involved in the process? I would be so pissed if I lived with my mom and if I were like Spawn living with my mom and she was dating someone who decided that they were going to insert themselves in between me and my mom when it comes to what the chores and expectations are. Like, dude, I would have flipped out. And the thing is, too, that, like, part of why Zena is saying, like, or part of why Poppy and Zena are both like, well, Zena needs special alone time in the kitchen, and you need to be super careful about making things that smell bad, is that Zena gets migraines and apparently, like, is super easily triggered into migraines. Now, my partner gets migraines, and like my life is somewhat limited because like I can't burn certain candles because they're a migraine trigger, whatever. So, like, I get it to some extent. But if you're in this situation where you're basically like, you literally are not allowed to leave your room because if you are anywhere near me, I'm going to get a migraine. If it were me in that situation, Zena would just need to get habituated to being like migraine 24/7 because I'm not going to stay holed up in my room because you are taking up the entire living room and have decided that my mere presence cooking something in the kitchen is going to give you a migraine. Like, yeah, be a migraine then. Enjoy being in bed all day. That shit I would just be a nightmare to live with. So this, honestly, Poppy and Zena, you are both lucky that Spawn is such a kind and gentle person because you f***ed that kid over a lot and they could have f***ed you over pretty hard too and they chose not to. Like, chose not to. I'm trying to figure if there's anything else in here that I want to cover or if I'm just about ready to wrap it up here. I think I'm just about ready to wrap it up here. Like, Spawn was planning to move out and they ended up crawling out of, yeah, we covered the blackmail. Or is there new blackmail? One last note about Spawn. Oh yeah, because Poppy did publicly say, oh, we're going to come after Spawn with legal action on stream. They were like, we're going to sue you. I don't know what for specifically. I didn't watch whatever. But I guess that's the most recent note is that Spawn took down all of these posts, basically. They exist still as screenshots, but they don't exist out there in public anymore because Spawn was like, I guess I just don't want to deal with fighting this legally. But yeah, so I don't, I'm not sure to what extent because I haven't seen the stream. I don't know to what extent this is like the same level of blackmail. But so basically Poppy and Zena have twice now been like, we are going to sue you or expose you in order to force you to do something that we want you to do. Yeah, super great parenting style, suing your own child. Here's a fun thing. So here's Poppy. Here's Poppy saying, so this is a DM between Milena and Poppy. Milena says, I wanted to do everything you've been doing. I'm just not as stupid and id driven as you. You don't. You just blackmailed your kid on stream. And Poppy says, yup, and I would do it again. And that was like earlier today, 3 hours ago. So nothing that Poppy does is wrong, according to her. It's literally like everything she does is justified according to her. If someone else is trying to publish her name, that's doxing and it's endangering her life. But if she tries to dox someone else, or if she releases someone else's name that isn't currently public, it's fine for her to do it and it's not a big deal. Remember? It's fine when I do it. She's just like, yes, I committed blackmail and I would do it again. It's a crime, like an actual crime. All like some of the other things, like obviously a lot of the other stuff she's done is like questionable, inappropriate behavior, whatever. But like she's off the deep end. And like I said, I don't know what part of why this is happening now is because what else could possibly happen after this? She has destroyed her professional credibility. She's gonna try to probably like establish her own private practice because who the is gonna hire her if this is what's online? Yeah, she has destroyed her professional credibility. She's also destroyed, hopefully, her credibility online. Like her being dropped from Whiteleaf, I have seen fans of hers saying, oh, I can't believe Whiteleaf would do this. What justification could you possibly have? It's like the crime she committed, the blackmail, you know, everything else was bad, but that's dumb. Like it's very obvious. You committed a crime publicly. Everybody saw it. Everybody knows what you're doing. She lost her job originally for the harassment campaign and the fact that that harassment campaign could open up her boss's private practice liability. It may well be. Zena, it is interesting to me that Zena doesn't have a job, but apparently could get a tech job super easy, was what Zena was saying back when there was a question about whether Poppy would lose her job. Like, well, whatever, it's not a big deal. I'll just get a job. Like, okay, so could you have had a job this entire time? Why were you guys having Spawn pay rent if you could have just had a job? I don't know. Again, I decided to cover this because all of this is egregious. It's nonsensical. It's messed up, and it's been relegated to Twitter and like a couple of like drama channels. So like literally, if you feel the need to have someone go in depth more than we did, we tried to cover a lot of different things, and so we couldn't go completely in depth on everything. We were trying to show a pattern of behavior, so we couldn't go into every single detail of each breakup and each inappropriate thing she said or did. You know, like if you want to, please go read the rest of the documents. If you want to, please go see what Poppy has said on stream. I'm sure she will do a stream again in the future and she'll mention me and this content. So listen, I am always encouraging people to like get the full perspective and not worry about like not get a bias in. I tried my best to be like fair and balanced while also being like, this is stupid and I'm really annoyed. I'm wrapping up soon, but I do want to read what Dizzy just said. Dizzy says, somewhere there's a clip from a stream I watched, I think it was a VOD, where Poppy says that healthcare providers are always taking Zena aside to ask if Zena is being abused by Poppy. And then Poppy said something like, if anyone in this dynamic is abusive, it's Zena. And Poppy said it like it was no issue. It's pretty rough. And like, I've heard a lot of things privately that I decided not to go into, you know? And some of it is that Zena is part of the problem. Like sometimes it seems as though Poppy is starting to be reasonable about, let's say, for example, the no flake thing. And then like it's clear that she goes and talks to Zena and then comes back and is like a huge crazy person about it again. And there, you know, Poppy treats it like it's normal that she and Zena just have screaming matches. Like that's just how their relationship is. And if you want to date either one of us, you have to deal with the fact that you're just going to have to be around screaming matches every fucking month because, okay, here, I just want to say this last thing. Part of why Zena claims that they are the way that they are is because of PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoria disorder or some shit like that. But it means like when you're coming about to have your period, you like are super way more emotional dysregulation than normal PMS, right? Zena, baby, honey, sweetheart. I know that this is just an excuse for you to be abusive, right? But if you do have premenstrual dysphoric disorder, are you not on testosterone? I thought you were on testosterone. Why are you not on an estrogen blocker? If you have PMDD, that's severe, and you are on testosterone, but you're still experiencing period symptoms, most people who are on T and they're still experiencing painful, difficult period symptoms, they'd go on an estrogen blocker. So here's the thing. Zena, go to therapy, get on estrogen blockers. 2, Poppy, go to DBT, actually dedicate yourself to the program, and stop being poly until you get your shit figured out. Like, and also stop pursuing 18 and 19-year-olds, maybe. Like, you shouldn't do it ever, but especially not as a therapist who's 42 and who's publicly online. Like, you can trust me, I'm a therapist, I know about consent. Yeah, use your skills. So, yeah, or just anyone half your age. Yeah, maybe like, if you're 42, maybe don't date anybody who's younger than 30. Just like as a general rule. Yeah, and you know, we have hoped that she would improve, that Zena would improve. Like, I don't really see that happening. So at this point, I would kind of just like for her to quietly go away, but she's just gonna keep doubling down and getting like weirder. Zena says they're microdosing tea, so it's ostensibly a much lower dose than regular HRT. You can still go on an estrogen blocker. It would still be okay. Like, talk to your doctor about an e-blocker. The picture that we've painted of Poppy, based on all of these screenshots, is a person with very mismanaged BPD who is not interested in managing her BPD. And I've heard some people claim that she says things like, DBT just doesn't work for me, which is like how an abusive person tries to avoid accountability. Because yeah, DBT does require you to actually take accountability and actually try to engage with reality and stop relying 100% on your interpretations of events to dictate your experience with reality. So she has unmanaged BPD. She cavorts about as like a professional therapist who knows things, and therefore you can trust her. She's feeding you toxic, incorrect ideas about how BPD is a terminally painful illness that you can never possibly manage and fix, and the expectation that she should manage it is ableist. She uses her platform to bring in young, vulnerable, mentally ill trans women with trauma, and she tries to befriend and date them. And all the while, she's been abusing her kid, depriving them of food, letting her partner scream at them all the time. Like, you're a bad mom if your partner is screaming at your kid and you keep dating them. Like, but she already knew that she's a bad mom. Like, she didn't need me to tell her that. So anyway, that's the person that has been allowed to do this in the community space. And we can hope that she's at this point where she's just kind of on her way out, because this is unreasonable. Unreasonable, toxic behavior. Oh, and the crimes. Did I forget the crimes? The blackmail, the crimes. Capital C, crimes. Remember Bimbo Politics? I did an investigation a few years ago drumming up evidence to see if BP was the same person as Lorelai Bailey, and Poppy got on my ass over it. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Poppy providing cover for other trans women who are allegedly predatory, you know? It's almost like she's circling the wagons. Sussy, sussy wussy. All right, babes. Thank you for joining me